O Yahweh, Kuma, Yahweh, Wayafutsu O Yeaka, Wayanusa Misaneka Misaniaka. Arise of you, O Yahweh. Let your enemies be scattered, and let those that hate thee flee from before thee. Give him thanks by saying hallelujah.
All right, fam, welcome to Into All Truth. May the Ruach HaKodesh lead you into all truth and show you things to come. Hear me. So I send the email. There's a lot of stuff to do, though. Welcome, Charlon. Shalom. Welcome, family. Just give us a thumbs up. We got 19 people watching. Give us a thumbs up. Welcome, fam. You know, I just really thank you, everybody. I thank all my new people on TikTok, but most of all, I thank all my people over there on YouTube. You've been such a support to me. And, you know, Yah is just really blessing me. I mean, you wouldn't believe the testimonies, the things he's doing in my life and the peace and, you know, just, I don't even know what to say. I'm very blessed. You saw that I did that video, fam, that was all about the law versus the spirit of the law. And let me tell you, that's real in Israel. That is so real, because I just find that Israel is really under the letter of the law. And of course, the law hasn't passed away. However, Israel is under the letter of the law, and that was something Yah was really showing me, that I was functioning under the letter of the law lately as well. So, you know, he always takes me through everything, and take me a long time. It's going to be very involved. It's going to be very long, because I've been wanting to do this video. Shalom, Peggy. Family, I have been wanting to do this video for about 2 weeks. I've been wanting to do this video for about 2 weeks. So there's a lot of information that I have stored up. A lot of information. And so, yeah, it's going to be long. So shalom, family, and welcome to Into All Truth. And we're going to really be discussing what's going on with India. We're still going to touch on what is going on in the Sudan. And the gold standard, what it means coming in, and how that is operating in Africa through Zimbabwe, as well as we know, and I went over so very much how in the Sudan, they're really, they're using that gold. We're going to talk about who are the parties in the Sudan. Obviously, it's the West. It's China and Russia and India on the one hand, then it's India working with America and the 10 kings who hate the whore America, which includes Canada. And that's really who's responsible for the conflict, proxy conflict going on in the Sudan. I've gone over that. And so we're just going to review a bit of that, talk about the players, and then take a look at this Egyptian history that's being revived by the East Indians. That came out about a week after I started talking about all this stuff. And so I'm just going to review that information, then we're going to go into a whole lot of stuff. So family, please like and share, and I'm going to get into this.
There's a world of a difference between meeting the needs of people and sharing the spoils of power. The two generals who are fighting in Sudan are not doing so to meet the needs of the people. If that was their motivation, the bullets and bombs wouldn't be flying all over the place. If that was their motivation, they wouldn't allow themselves to become proxies of a larger, more secretive war of foreign powers enforcing their selfish, greedy needs These two generals, General Abdul Fattah al-Burhan, head of the Sudanese army, and General Mohamed Dagalo, head of the Rapid Support Forces paramilitary group, are not knights in shining armor out to rescue Sudan from imminent peril. Let me tell you who they are. Let's start with General Hamdan Dagalo. Do you have any idea what the Janjaweed militia did in Darfur? Check it out. All I can tell you is that in the early 2000s, the Janjaweed militia executed one of the worst atrocities on African soil. 300,000 people died. Most of them were ethnic Africans who look like me. General Hamdan Dagalo was one of the leaders of the Janjaweed militia. How can such a man be Sudan's savior? And just to remind you, he controls most of the gold mines in Sudan, which means most of the proceeds from Sudan's gold doesn't benefit Sudan's 45 million people. As for General al-Burhan, he has recklessly steered Sudan to the edge of the cliff. For starters, he led the military coup against Sudan's transitional government that he was a part of. He then declared a state of emergency. He later issued an emergency order that handed immunity to security forces on a silver platter. He reloaded this impunity by restoring arrest powers to the General Intelligence Services, whose track record of serious abuses is no secret. These two generals have started a destructive fire that some foreign governments are more than happy to keep fanning because they are secret beneficiaries of the conflict. What then should be done if these two generals cannot be trusted? It's simple, really. It's not complicated. Power should be handed to the people of Sudan through representative entities like the resistance committees that are scattered all over Sudan. USA, Russia, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and all these foreign powers that are interfering in Sudan must stop supporting either of the two military factions and start supporting the people of Sudan, the resistance committees. I know that this is easier said than done, but the alternative is unacceptable.
All right, family. So, as usual, it's the same old story. There's a lot of different details, but it's the same story, isn't it? It's the story of, the two parties that I just spoke of, once again, are there in the Sudan, and they are, it's a proxy war. So let me just share this. I know you guys like to see me, but I'm like, most of the time I enjoy talking to you guys, but I kind of don't like to be on camera because I just get too worried about have I got food on my face, stuff like that. I don't like to worry about that stuff. So anyway, I'm just going to show you a bit more about this. All right. So who the players are and stuff like that. And let me just show you here. So here is, once again, here are the players. And you can see just how East Indian this guy looks. And this guy looks very Arabic. This is obviously the American side. This is the Russian side. They literally supported the southern part of the Sudan to form as a separate government. So we always know that's a trigger to divide and conquer. And we're going to see how that's actually operated also in India. This whole divide and conquer structure is actually been operating in India at the same time. So these are the two players. We don't need to go too much into it because I've already done these videos on it. Okay, fam? But I just wanted you to get more of the story on the history of what's going on in Sudan. Here's another video. It's easier to just watch a video. So let me just share another video with you.
Who is...
Hold on 1 second.
All right, so let me basically summarize what's been happening in Sudan. So currently our president is Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and his vice president is Mohammed Hamdan Daglo, who is also known as Hemeti. Each one of them has their own army. Abdel Fattah al-Burhan obviously has the Sudanese army. Hemeti has the RSF, also known as the Rapid Support Forces, which is them basically rebranding themselves, and they were called the Janjaweed. Alright, so they've basically been in power since 2019, since they overthrew the past presidents. And they were basically promising to give back the government to the civilian government. But here's the catch as well. They are very afraid of the ICC and the international governments, because they're basically all criminals that are all wanted by the ICC. And every time they try to give the power to the civilian government, they basically say psych. And on top of that, like I said it earlier, each one of them have their own military. But here's the problem with Hemeti's military. They are all non-Sudanese people. Basically, all of them are from the Shad and from the Sahara region. And then, like I said it earlier, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan also has his own military, the Sudanese military. And since we have two groups of military, one is the military and the other one is a militia group, they're trying to combine it into one force. But here's the problem with Hemeti, right? His problem is that he actually wants to have all the power. And he wants his militia group to be stronger than the military itself. And the people of Sudan obviously do not want that, because then foreign people will be taking over power. And that's why we are here today.
Okay, so basically they keep pretending to the Sudanese people that the two of these parties are going to unify. So, you know, it's just the same old game, right? So, all right, so let's get into more of this. So here's some of the things that I'm going to share with you, family. All right. So we just went over that summary. And of course, we've talked about the fact that this gold-backed currency is what is financing Russia. Okay. It's what's financing Russia. And it's also gold. It's South Africa is financing Russia. And I actually found out that the South African leader was raised by Oppenheimer. So I'm going to go ahead and suspect he's probably a Black Edomite. Now, I know this is not the channel for some of the camps, because there's a lot of camp people who do not realize that the Edomites are Black and are really scared to look into the Arab slave trade, because then, you know, they may just have to look a little bit deeper than skin color in order to find out exactly who Israel is. This is a real problem that people are suffering from, but, you know, I'm here to help. So I think before we go into something I want to show you guys that's going on is that Zimbabwe actually has a gold-backed currency. And Zimbabwe has, you know, I already showed you in the other videos, please go and look at them. They talk about the fact that there is like literally, I think it's like they took out 60 tons of gold. So please look at my other Sudan videos. They took out 60 tons of gold, like in the last 3 months from the Sudan, the Russians. So they're building that BRICS currency from gold bricks from the Sudan. But another nice, and I just want to be encouraging to you, family, thing that's happening is what's happening in Zimbabwe. And what's happening in Zimbabwe is they also have a currency. And so let's just listen to this story on the Zimbabwe currency. And then we're going to go into the Egyptian stuff, but I just want to give you some hope, and I kind of have a testimony around this. I was like, anyway, let's listen.
So as India takes strides towards the future, some nations back, like Zimbabwe, it has reintroduced gold as a currency. That's right. Zimbabwe has launched new digital tokens. They're backed by gold. It's a move to replace Zimbabwe's actual currency. It's called the Zimbabwe dollar. What explains this move? To answer that, I must tell you about Zimbabwe's economy. It's in a bad shape, and that's an understatement. Inflation has shot through the roof. In December 2022, inflation touched a whopping 280%. It's not inflation anymore. It's what economists call hyperinflation.
So what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, oh, they just can't manage their money. So they've got to introduce this gold-backed currency. And they're saying, oh, they're in this state of hyperinflation. Well, it's because they've been boycotted by America for 10 years.
Says this will help in stabilizing the currency. How? By cooling the demand for the US dollar in the country. You see, when the crisis began, people started exchanging the local currency for the US dollar. That's because the US dollar, had more value. Now the government wants gold to replace the US dollar and contain the crisis. It's an ambitious experiment. Experts are not sure it will work though. Although Zimbabwe is not the only country toying with this idea, in recent years, many countries have adopted digital currencies, and that too in different forms.
All right, so I just wanted to show you guys that because they have a lot of gold.
Or Bitcoin.
All right. They have a lot of gold in Zimbabwe, and they have some of the most jewels in Zimbabwe as well. Okay. So it's basically a holy land. But this is just so weird. It's like, I don't even know if I'm doing my TikTok right. I've got like one viewer. Normally I have like, at least like 20 or something. It's just really weird. Anyway, I'm not paying attention to my TikTok too much, fam. You're just going to have to listen. A bunch of people on a chat yesterday wanted to hear more about all this kind of stuff going on in India. So that's what this is, but you can always go and watch it on YouTube. Okay, so let me show you something else about that history. And I'm just really kind of doing a survey of all of this because it gives me, I think it's just to encourage you guys and give you guys some hope. And
the United States recently issued new sanctions against Zimbabwe. And I think most people's reaction is going to be, why the hell are we going after Zimbabwe? When you think about the countries the U.S. is punishing with financial and trade sanctions, most people know of Iran or Cuba or Venezuela. But the United States has actually maintained a severe sanctions regime against Zimbabwe for the last 21 years, and it hardly gets mentioned in the media. And the worst part is, these sanctions were essentially put in place because Zimbabweans took back their own land from European settlers. Here's what you need to know. Zimbabwe, like many other regions of Africa, was colonized by European powers in the late 19th century. The various European powers met at the Berlin Conference in 1884 and divided up the continent, deciding which powers would control which regions. The British Empire, one of the strongest European powers at the time, decided that it would take massive portions of northern and southern Africa, including Zimbabwe. The man responsible for overseeing Britain's conquest of southern Africa was Cecil Rhodes, an arch racist and an unabashed defender of European imperialism and colonization. To give you an idea of how he thought, here's Rhodes in his own words. It is our duty to seize every opportunity of acquiring more territory, and we should keep this one idea steadily before our eyes, that more territory simply means more of the Anglo-Saxon race, more of the best, the most human, most honorable race the world possesses. And by the way, this is the same Rhodes that the Rhodes Scholarship is named after. In 1890, Rhodes led the British conquest of Zimbabwe and named it Rhodesia, after himself. A little over a decade later, the British controlled 3/4 of the country and made the indigenous Africans tenants on their own land, forcing them to pay fees and taxes to live on the land that rightfully belonged to them. Taking the land and all the valuable resources that came with it made the British settlers incredibly wealthy. On the flip side, having their land taken, black Rhodesians were forced to become wage laborers, working for the white landowners for barely enough to scrape by. The typical white neighborhood in Rhodesia had big luxury houses with big lawns and gardens, while most black people lived in cramped substandard housing. The only black people that lived in the nicer white neighborhoods were domestic workers, who took care of household labor and landscaping. They lived on their white employers' properties. The white monopoly over the land also gave whites a monopoly over the Rhodesian political system, which was dominated by whites despite the fact that the country was overwhelmingly black. To give you an idea of how skewed Rhodesia's political system was, in 1976, Rhodesia's black population was over 6 million, while the white population was only 250,000. Despite this, of the 6 million black people in Rhodesia, only 9,000 had the right to vote. This allowed white voters to elect 50 members of Rhodesia's parliament, whereas black voters only elected 16. Many in the United States understandably compared this to Jim Crow. Rhodesia's Prime Minister Ian Smith famously declared that he would never support black majority rule in the country, not in 1,000 years. The government was so committed to white minority rule that it would go on to draft every white man under the age of 38 into the military to fight a bloody war against black liberation fighters instead of making concessions to them. However, no amount of conscription can change the reality that this country did not, nor did it ever, belong to white people. They had merely occupied it. Recognizing that a white-led government in southern Africa would never last, in 1979, the Rhodesian government pressured the black freedom fighters into an agreement called the Lancaster House Agreement in an attempt to salvage some semblance of white power. The Lancaster House Agreement reserved parliamentary seats for whites, and instead of simply returning the stolen land back to its rightful owners, set up a market-based system called willing buyer, willing seller, where the government of the newly named Zimbabwe would have to buy their own land back from the white farmers using foreign currency. The value of the land would be determined by foreign real estate companies owned by these very same white farmers. Zimbabwe's newly elected president, Robert Mugabe, who had become a preeminent leader in the liberation struggle, tried to adhere to the Lancaster Agreement, but progress was slow. For most of this time, Western powers praised Mugabe as a kind of moderate, reasonable force. But even a decade after the end of the war and the fall of Rhodesia, whites still controlled the vast majority of the land. In 1998, it was estimated that 95% of the economy was owned by white people or foreign investors. Many veterans of the Liberation War were getting tired of waiting. After all, they had risked their lives for this land, and they were beginning to feel that all of that fighting had been for nothing. The war veterans started occupying the white farms on their own accord, and Mugabe then gave the veterans the government's backing. In direct response to this policy, the U.S. Congress passed its first set of sanctions against Zimbabwe, freezing Zimbabwe's credit. For the next 21 years, the U.S., EU, and Canada would go on to repeatedly punish Zimbabwe for what amounts to taking back its own land. The latest round of
Okay, so you heard that included Canada, right? Was punishing them.
Sanctions is just a continuation of this neocolonial history. After a 2-week trip in Zimbabwe, the UN Special Rapporteur on Sanctions wrote a report calling on the various countries sanctioning Zimbabwe to lift these measures because of the devastating effect they had on the country. The report describes a country unable to develop because the financial sanctions against it prevent it from accessing credit and trading on the international market. The report states that financial restrictions prevent Zimbabwe from importing new technology and spare parts, which has rendered much of its health, transportation, energy, water, and other critical infrastructure obsolete. These policies have created a crisis of food insecurity, with over 7 million Zimbabweans going hungry in a country of 15 million, as well as a crisis of disease due to Zimbabwe's inability to import parts needed to clean its own water. The sanctions against Zimbabwe's state-owned companies have deprived Zimbabwe of revenue that it needs to fund essential services. In total, it's estimated that sanctions have deprived Zimbabwe of over $100 billion worth of aid and loans since 2001, a sum 4 times greater than the country's GDP. The Western media still demonizes Zimbabwe as a country that's apparently racist against whites for having expropriated the land they stole. They mock Zimbabwe and the land reform, saying that it's what made Zimbabwe poor, completely leaving out any mention of the crushing sanctions designed to strangle Zimbabwe's economy. Western governments love to talk about respecting property rights. But what about when a whole ownership structure is premised on racism, theft, and colonialism? It's obvious that the real right is African people's right to reclaim ownership over what was always theirs. So let's be clear. This is not about human rights or corruption. Never has been. Whether it's the Berlin Conference, sanctions against Zimbabwe, the war on Libya, or AFRICOM's expansion, it's always been about punishing any African country that defies Western powers.
All right, fam. So really interesting story with this is that, you often run into people from Africa. I just have a testimony to share. And I met a girl from Zimbabwe, and this is the story. So she came here to Canada when she was young, and went to university in Calgary. And she was dating African guys, and the African guys will have nothing to do with African women once they get here. And even her best friend was white, and her grandmother would be like, well, yeah, I love your best friend more than you. And she actually thought this was, she talked to me about this and I'm like, that's wrong. Like, you don't get this. And she said, yeah, well, that's how it is. And how it is in Canada is that a lot of the African women will bring their husbands here. And then when they get here, they get their visa and they leave them. They usually go and find a white woman. And it was so bad that the Canadian government had to make a law that they were allowed to leave them, because when they had to remain in the marriage, once they got here and got their citizenship, after the woman worked for them for 6 years, they would arrive here and they would actually try to kill their spouse so that they could get free and get a white woman. That's how mentally disabled the brothers in Africa are. So, so it shows you how deep the sickness is, right? The desire for the Philistine women, or whatever you want to call it. So now, of course, I'm not speaking of all white people, right? Obviously, I'm just talking about the issue that the men of the diaspora have. And then, just the whole kind of twisted dynamic here. Anyway, let me get into her story. So she was practicing a lot of the old OSHUN and Shango OSHE and these kind of water spirit religions, because, a lot of people in Africa are still in the paganism. And so I said, well, I said to her, what are you doing here? I said, you need to just go home. And she gave me her story. She was really stressed out. She had just had this job. And she told me that, oh no, I believe in my ancestors, and my ancestors have helped me so much. And she was complaining about her job, how horrible it was. And she was saying, the Black Canadians they're so disturbed and awful. I mean, they're just so awful. They're so crazy. They're so mentally ill. Like, I was working with them down in the kind of it's this Hastings area in Canada where the people are just really damaged. And so they set up this cheap housing there for people to live in. And a lot of the damaged Black street people end up, who've been here for generations. Like, I'm talking about the Black Canadians who were Black American and West Indians and, so on and so forth. And so there's this particular strip downtown where they are. And so that's where she was working. And she was like, they're just not well, and they're so crazy, and they attack me, and they're hostile to me. And I said, well, I'm like, well, basically, they're kind of warning you to go home. And she was like, oh, I don't believe that. I just think that there's something wrong with them and whatever. I said, well, she was like, but I just don't see why there's all this poverty there. And why all the Black people, why don't they just pull themselves up by their bootstraps? And, she was saying all that stuff, right? And I was like, well, do you want to know? And every time I tried to explain it to her, she was really stressed out. She would be like, oh, I don't want to hear it. And then she'd complain. And I'd say, well, you have no right to complain. I said, stop complaining. I don't want to hear it. I said, or else I can tell you what's really going on. Anyway, I wound up trying to explain to her the history of racism and colonialism, and that this was Babylon. And I was like, you shouldn't be here. You need to go home. Babylon's falling. Yah doesn't want you to bring any more of your ancestors here into captivity. Slavery is over. You need to go home. And I said, they're your warning. I said, they're your warning. And she said, it just feels like a satanic attack. Well, she went into her story. She had literally tried to marry a brother from Africa. The brothers from Africa reject the women when they get here because Canada is very racist. And not even back home, the brother she was with went and got a sister from Africa and married her. That's how bad it is. So anyway, she moved out here, and then she just started studying all these other religions, everything but scripture. And so finally she got her strength back together, and she went and did a ritual. And she did this ritual with stones, putting them in the water, 7 of them or something like that. She said she was down by the water. She doesn't remember what happened after that. She walked from Denman and found herself suddenly on Hastings, which is about 7 blocks away on the other side of kind of near Stanley Park. It's in Vancouver. And she was being put into an ambulance because she had lost her mind. She was insane. She was put in an asylum. She said while she was there, she still had her mind. And she was like, I got to play sane and get out of here. And she helped all these people who were in there. And then she said, but I knew it was just a test from my ancestors. So she goes, and then after that, I got this job. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, so which job was that? She's like, well, the job that I just told you about. And I'm like, oh, I'm like, so then she told me about it. And she told me that there were 7 Black people now who were light-skinned, black, chocolate, whatever, who just preyed upon her and harassed her. And her boss was a brother. And anytime she had all these complaints, what they were doing was this government-run organization that looked after housing for all these people, street people and stuff. And of course, a lot of, the diaspora is up in there. Well, the guy, anytime she came to him with the issues, because she's an ex-student and an African, he would be like, really? Oh no, they had nobody looking after the mental health of the people. They had nobody who had any kind of counseling training looking after these people. They were just hiring Black students because Black students from Africa who were in school working couldn't get jobs anywhere but in a place like that. And so they were siphoning off all the money for themselves, the agencies, the contractors running these government agencies, and just hiring little African students like her. And so, so I was like, okay. I was like, well, so these people harass you all the time and you want them to, they say, pull yourself up by, you want them to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, but they're so mentally damaged and crazy. She finally helped 5 of them and she had 2 left. And she eventually quit her job because she was so harassed, overworked. She was running everything and she was still being given this story of, I don't know what's going on. So it turns out there was a lady who was running everything and siphoning off all the money. Again, anyway, my friend had a nervous breakdown because she was so stressed. And here she was now, after she had left the job, a week before, 3 days actually before, about when she was talking to me. And she was like, the woman who ran the agency runs all these other agencies and has all these awards, but the friend I'm talking about, she has to set up immigration. She has all these immigration skills and she wants to set up immigration. And this friend of mine actually has all these contacts where he could get her like 1,000 people, like options for 1,000 people to come over from Africa to work in some of the camps and stuff they have here in Canada, because they do indentured servitude here in Canada. They bring Jamaicans in to work in hot houses during the planting season in Jamaica, and they work here in Canada in hot houses growing peppers, working 17 hours a day, 7 days a week. So they have slavery here in Canada still. And they bring in people over from India, the untouchables. We're going to go into them. So he was like, yeah, I know somebody who's building a camp and he can get, and I'm like, you're bringing your people into slavery. I'm like, you're not supposed to be doing this. Well, I think even though I've been through all of this, my ancestors with you. And I said, no, I said, you've nearly lost your mind because you're under satanic attack. I said, those are all demons and you're worshiping these false gods. And I said, and Yah is allowing it to happen because you're being judged, because we're Israel and you're not supposed to be worshiping these false gods, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, I went into my fast and everything and I prayed and prayed and prayed for her because she wanted to find another job and still bring more people. And so I fasted and prayed for her and I prayed she'd be vindicated. And she said, I can't do anything against this woman because she's very powerful. She was Ishi. And so she decided to do nothing. And so I fasted and prayed for her. Well, do you know the woman got exposed? And she's had to resign, and all the money she was skimming came out in the open. And I called my new friend today because I had been praying. I was like, I wish she would just go back to Zimbabwe and do immigration and bring the diaspora here. She called me up and she said, hi. Well, I called her. I said, how are you doing? What's going on? I sent her the video and everything on the woman. And she said, yeah, I heard. And she was like, here's it. You know, and I sent her an article and I said, you've been vindicated. And she said, yeah. And I said, so don't worship those false gods anymore. I said, or you're going to get in worse trouble. And she said, yeah. She said, oh, I said, I just fasted and prayed for you for like about 15 days and that you would be vindicated. That was one of the things I was praying for. And she was like, really? And I was like, yes, because she was really hurt by what this woman was doing. And she was going to continue to hire all these young Black students to do this work that they were not qualified to do and that would stress them out and put them through what she was going through. So anyway, she's from Zimbabwe. So then I called her up today to ask her, that was a week ago. And I called her up today and said, how are you doing? How's the job going or work going? And she said, I'm going back to Zimbabwe. She said, I'm going to do reverse immigration because it seems like everyone wants to come, all the Black people from North America back to Africa. And my family's setting me up in real estate. And I was like, hallelujah. So anyway, Zimbabwe is going to become a place to go, family. And there are some of the most jewels in the world there. And so it's part of the land of Israel. So I thought I would tell you guys about that. And I had actually prayed to Yah. I was like, is everything still good? Are we still good? And he was like, yes, we're absolutely fantastic. And so that was one of the gifts he gave me today. So, but I'm going to go into this thing with you about, so Zimbabwe is going to become an option. And if people are looking to go there, you know, it's going to probably take her a while, like 6 months or more to try to set that up. But it's also an option because they're completely independent. And they, I believe, are also saying no LGBT, no, none of that there too. And so they're also sanctioned, right, for that. So they're a really Yah-led people. But anyway, next thing I want to go into here is, you're kind of wondering, how is this all connected? It's really kind of what's going on in Africa right now and the stuff that I've been looking at. And I also want to just show you, I want to focus in now on India and the Indians and what's going on there, because there's a whole group of people amongst the Indians who are Israel. Okay. And so we're going to go into some of that. You probably already know about them. I already did a video on the Dalets and so we're going to talk about the Dalets, the Dravidians and everything and some of that history. And so, but first I want you guys to take a look at how this history is going to be reclaimed. And I want you to be able to rightly divide between who these people groups are and who they are not. Okay. So this is Ham, all right? But I want you to ask the question, why are they reclaiming this history? Are they reclaiming the true Egypt? Or are they trying to reclaim a place in Africa? What are they doing? What are their motivations? And so I want you to be able to keep your eye on that. And so let me just share with you what I have to share. Let's see. All right, it's going to be on Chrome. Okay. So, sorry, Pam, I'm just trying to get hey. I just get a little annoyed by this technical stuff. All right, let's see if this is it. All right, so this is actually what's going on in America. And these two videos came out around the same time. So this is a couple of weeks ago.
To shed its cloak of conservatism, the question is, will it mitigate the crisis of faith in? Our last story tonight is about a statue. A statue of the Buddha has been found in Egypt. It dates back to the age of the Roman Empire. Egypt has also unearthed a Sanskrit inscription and coins belonging to an Indian kingdom. So how did these artifacts land in Egypt? Well, it's more proof of what we've long known. India's global footprint is a centuries-old story. India has been interacting with the world for millennia. It spans trade, cultural exchanges, and even the spread of Indic religions. India has left a mark across the world, which is why symbols of ancient civilization keep emerging around the world. This time, it happens to be Egypt. Our next report tells you more.
India and Egypt are both among the oldest civilizations of the world, and they have a history of close contact from ancient times. So it's no surprise that this statue of the Buddha has been found in Egypt. The statue was found in the ancient Egyptian town of Berenike. According to a statement by Egypt's Antiquities Ministry, a Polish-US mission discovered the statue. The mission was digging at an ancient temple in the seaport town. It said the discovery has important indications over the presence of trade ties between Egypt and India during the Roman era. The statue measures 28 inches in height, and part of its right side, including the leg, are missing. The Buddha is portrayed with a halo around his head, and also a lotus flower by his side. It's not known how exactly the statue landed in Egypt, but if we were taking a guess, the statue got there during the reign of Emperor Ashoka. Ashoka's edicts refer to his relations with Egypt, particularly when Egypt was under the rule of Ptolemy II some 2,300 years ago. It's not just the Buddha's statue that's been found. Archaeologists also stumbled across a Sanskrit inscription believed to be about 2,000 years old. Apart from the statue and inscription, 2 2nd century coins from the Satavahana Kingdom of India were also found. The port of Berenike was among the main trading hubs of Egypt. It handled ships carrying a variety of products from India. Products like pepper, spices, precious stones, textiles, and even ivory. These goods would be transported on camelbacks across the desert to the Nile River. From there, they eventually found their way to the rest of the Roman Empire. The city of Berenike was itself one of the transit hubs which connected the Mediterranean Sea to the Indian Ocean. Needless to say, trade between India and Egypt was booming, and remnants of ancient ties between both the civilizations are now being unearthed. In 2021, Egyptian torpedo jars were unearthed in the Indian state of Tamil Nadu. Archaeologists believe that the jars were used to transport oil from Egypt to India. The goal is to find items that grab the media's attention. Egypt plans to attract over 30 million tourists annually by 2028. This would be a significant jump. Before the pandemic, Egypt attracted just 13 million people. Be that as it may, Egypt's quest to unearth artifacts has now shown the kind of relationship it shared with India thousands of years ago.
All right. So,
and before we end the show with
so basically, though, you know, why are they focusing on that Egypt and not the real Egypt, right? Because I think they want, you know, obviously they want a stake in Africa. But they are admitting to this history and this past. And like I said, you see all these Indians who are coming into government in America and in the West. But this is a particular people, okay? Because a lot of the people in India are, I'm going to go into it in a second, but they're Hindus, like Gandhi, okay? And I'm going to show you Gilgamesh in a second. But first, I'm going to show you what they're unearthing in the States. They're going back and they're saying, yes, the Grand Canyon was probably Egypt. And so let's check that out. And Shalom Miles and everybody on YouTube, Peggy King, Stacey Polam, Booney. I'm sorry, fam, this took me so long to do, but I get so caught up in the information and then I make all these connections and I don't know. Hopefully I can make them today as you're watching. So this came out the same time, like 3 weeks ago.
The walls. And, well, we're not the only ones. This discovery might just change everything you've ever known about this natural wonder and the secrets it uncovered about the Grand Canyon. But before we get into that, we have to backtrack a little. The Grand Canyon has been considered a sacred ground for Native American tribes since time
All right, we're
immemorial.
going to jump ahead of this because they're going to go into the Native American tribes and their connection to it. And I think the Native Americans are really Canaanites, or not really sure exactly.
Naturally, Kincaid's curiosity was piqued.
So this is
And
all
he
about
decided-
Kincaid. And so they're finally confirming and bringing back this information. And they're talking about the fact that they are actually going to get into the fact that the Smithsonian kept hiding all this information they were unearthing. So this is a pretty good video. I suggest you watch it. See, the title is What Just Emerged at the Grand Canyon Shocks the Whole World. Family, you can always just minimize, okay? You can always just freeze frame for content. Family, I really don't like to get questions about where did I get this map? Where did I get, it's very easy to do an image search. I'll put up the information if I can, but I get really busy, or it's kind of, some people are like, oh, it just takes a second. And it's like, no, because when I process so much information, you wouldn't believe how much information I go through. And just little administrative stuff like that can just drain me, because it's like, sometimes I'll send the link or whatever, but it's like, I would rather that you guys do your own work. Like, you've got to, I'll just do a screenshot and I'll find the title of something, like the most obscure things in the world, and I will find it. And some of the stuff is like really easy to find. Like, you'll see it on several videos. I will give you some kind of basic resource, but you can always just find it with a screenshot. All right. But I know sometimes your algorithm isn't the same as mine, though, because I'm always researching this stuff. So sometimes that can get in the way. And so if you're really having trouble, I'll send you something. But I would prefer to know that you looked high and low, and send me all your links and where you looked. I want you to lay out to me like at least 10 places where you looked, and then ask me. Okay. So, because it really throws my flow off, because a lot of times I have to pray and then I start contemplating and then I have to relax. I mean, it's a whole process. Sometimes I'm like, Abba. And then he's like, put out this really simple short video. And I'm like, okay. So anyway, it's like, I just really don't like administration. And if you request something like that from me, you have to offer to do me an administrative favor. You have to offer to do something for me, because it is very taxing for me. All right, to go back and find that stuff. Because you wouldn't believe the amount of information. I don't mean to be grumpy or anything, but it's like, to go back, it can be a bit of a pain sometimes. All right. But I will usually try and put it there. You'll see the name, like right there. There's the name of the video. Or you will, I'll just play it, but I would have minimized it. Don't say, what was that video? You go and you go back to the point where you saw the title and you go find it. All right.
Decided to investigate. So he stopped his boat and set out on foot, even though there was no trail to follow. As he hiked, he soon stumbled upon an incredible discovery. Hundreds of steps carved into the sandstone, leading up to a high shelf on the side of the canyon. What was even more amazing was that these steps led to an entrance that was clearly man-made. But here's where things get even crazier. The entrance led to a hidden passage covered in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. Yes, you read that right. In the Grand Canyon of all places. Kincaid was understandably stunned. People had never existed in that part of the canyon. So, how could there be hieroglyphics? Beginning of a much bigger discovery. As he made his way deeper into the passage, Kincaid couldn't believe his eyes. He saw intricate carvings, artifacts, and treasures that were centuries old. It was as if he had stepped back in time. The explorer realized that he had stumbled upon something truly right beneath it. Kincaid realized that he had stumbled upon an entire underground city. The main passageway was around 12 feet wide, while some of the rooms were as big as 30 by 40 feet square. But that wasn't the most impressive part. The walls were around 3 feet and 6 inches thick. Kincaid was standing in an engineering marvel, a feat that he couldn't comprehend. He had no idea how it was possible to construct something like this. As he explored further, Kincaid found several granaries with shelves, some of which still contained seeds. Thick. The rooms were full of all kinds of artifacts, including metal tools made out of copper, a technology that shouldn't have existed in this area. No, it wasn't just a random set of rooms and tunnels. It was a properly planned city, one that served a purpose. The citadel had been lived in by thousands of people for hundreds, if not thousands of years. But who are these people? What happened to them? Well, that's where things get really interesting. You see, the civilization that crafted this citadel was incredibly advanced for its time, and far more sophisticated than any of the native tribes that had occupied the area for thousands of years. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so maybe it was just a real artifacts and
they're going to start going into how they delivered all of these bodies, like bones and artifacts, to the Smithsonian.
Some of these,
and the Smithsonian would be like, yeah, and then they would just totally ignore them. So that's the history with that. All right, fam. And so that comment about the stuff, like, I don't mean to be mean, but it's kind of one of the reasons why I got burnt out, which is I would be like answering all these emails and sending all these little things. And I was like, and then nobody was helping me with admin. And it's just, it takes 90% of my energy to do something. And I've explained it to people. For some reason, if I explain it to someone, they will come to me right away and ask me to do it. So I'm not doing it because it's too much. I would rather just deliver the information to you. And if you really want to find it, if Yah means for you to find it, you'll find it. It'll be okay. So anyway, this came out at exactly the same time that they were talking about PHUT, okay, in Africa, Egypt, all right? And so why am I bringing this up? I'm talking about it because we're going to kind of go into just trying to figure out what I should talk to you about first, whether I should go into the Dalets. So you guys understand that this discovery was made of Nimrod, the body of Nimrod. Now, I am not sure, family, you know how people always be, these people are fabricate and lie all the time, you know, and remember Charles Schwab said that this was going to be about a time that was all about narratives. So we're in a place where we're at risk of learning about false narratives anytime we're talking about this kind of stuff, okay? So I'm just saying that to say so that you can, you know, be aware that I'm going to cite this example. I'm going to show you something, but this isn't necessarily what it is, but I actually think it might be. And so let's get into it. What did Nimrod look like? Because Nimrod would have been a Hamite, and Nimrod was supposed to be a giant. It says he was a mighty man before Yahuwah. Now, I covered this stuff like 5 years ago, but I'm looking at it again because we are looking at sort of returning the Hamitic identity to the East Indians, okay? To the Hamites, all right? And so that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about the East Indians reclaiming their place in the temples of Egypt on the continent of Africa. We're talking about the videos that are coming out about the discovery of all of these kind of East Indian, Egyptian artifacts right in the Grand Canyon. And so now we're going to go into the, quote, discovery of Gilgamesh's tomb to see if we can get any indication of whom the Hamites are. And so we're going to look at their appearance, their skin color. We're going to try and differentiate, you know, we're going to have to ask the questions, which Hamites, right? And so let's just get into this. All right. Okay. All right, so this is the discovery of Gilgamesh's tomb. This was like, I can't remember what year it was. I think it might have been like 2015 or something like this, a long time ago. I remember Rob Spivo was talking about this. All right. Dagon, the fish god, all over him. You see, some people are like, oh, he looks a lot like Luca, right? Luca is Lucifer. He looks kind of like Jesus, right? Like the fake, Now, they're kind of, they're like, look how beautifully preserved. But then this is what they showed in the past. So, but now this is what it looks like, kind of thing. Now this is what they're showing you. So you see the aquiline nose. He could look like a very dark East Indian. He could also look like a European, right? You see? And so let me just bring up some information on when this was discovered. Gilgamesh, Nimrod. And there was supposed to be this whole battle going on. I don't know. You just never know. Body of Nimrod. And so as we're talking here, when you look at this image family, you have to ask, why is he looking very European? He is looking East India, but then you kind of see little shadows. It's like a little bit of Photoshop, a little bit of makeup work. They made his nose look a little more aquiline. It's just, and then compared to the final image, that's not the same. That looks a little different, right? He's not as filled out, right? And this is the person they're trying to revive, right? They're hoping this will come alive as fake Jesus, right? They want to revive him, and people are saying, oh, is he the Antichrist, right? What I want you to look at is, this is supposed to be his actual skin color. All right. So they're saying Anunnaki found intact. Treasure of Nimrod is found in Iraq. Let me see. Oh, that was just the treasure. I can't seem to find the information on the body. When I get on here, these Google fallen ones don't want to cooperate. Or maybe they just left their post because they're bound in hell right now. I don't know. I think I prefer to see it that way. But yeah, so he looks very European. But then he's also, this is supposed to be his skin color. So he looks very East Indian as well. And this is very relevant to what we're about to talk about, because we're going to talk about the Dalets. We're going to talk about the Dalets. And again, we're going to talk about India. And so we're just going to give you a reminder about where India actually is as we get into this conversation. But I just want you to remember how he looks. Maybe I have to do a DuckDuckGo search. You do DuckDuckGo. It's usually more cooperative. But yeah, what are your comments? Let me see what you guys are saying. What do you think about how his body looks? What do you think about how his body looks? Tomb of Nimrod with a perfectly, look at this one even. Let me show you what I'm finding here. Stop this share. And I'm going to show you what I found through good old DuckDuckGo. I'm going to keep that quick time and then I'll show you this. All right. So there's the video, but then there's this. All right, so see, that's even better. He looks so European with that nose, right? But then you look at these other images. He's got a heavier brow. Okay, Gilgamesh. All right, Nimrod. And he's holding the lion because he's so, the lion is so small compared to him because he's a giant. Now, the story is that Nimrod was the son of KUSH, according to scripture. But it's not really tracked in the Bible that Semiramis was his mother and his wife. And she was the granddaughter of Noah. And the name Semiramis comes from Sumerian. And so then there may be a connection to the Samaritans. Okay, so when you look at that connection, people say, well, no, the Samaritans are the descendants of Israel. But really, they're the descendants of Israel mixed in with those people, right? Because the northern kingdom got really mixed in with the Canaanites, right? Like with the Phoenicians, who were the Moabites, the Canaanites, the Edomites, the Assyrians, etc., right? And the Philistines, who were the Greeks. So I just want you to, think about this. Here's kind of a very Negro-ish image, but I don't even know that, maybe not the head shape. But so we're seeing again this connection to Nimrod. Let's see. And even Rob Skiba represented him as being very white, which is kind of interesting. Tomb of Nimrod. Preserved body over 10,000 years old. Okay, look at the size of it. Oh my goodness. I think that's a painting. All right, so let's see if we can find any more information on it, because I want you to think about what he looks like as India is reclaiming their identity as Ham, basically, primarily Egypt and Put and Putta. All right. Cloning of Nimrod and Osiris is underway because of the tomb found. Okay, so the subject today, family, 2013. I think this one that says Tomb of Nimrod found, in 2016. All right. Tomb of both Osiris, the Egyptian god, okay, very shortly after the tomb of Gilgamesh was discovered in Iraq. This was back, it was 2003. That's right, during the War on Terror. These two gods are linked to Nimrod, all right? And with their understanding of DNA, they're talking about maybe cloning him, bringing him back to life as, if they revive his body, maybe not through some kind of electrical process, but through cloning, then they can possibly put into him the spirit of Sophia, the not Ruach spirit, right? But once again, I just want you to remember, family, how he looks, okay? And think about it. Think about his appearance, because he kind of looks a bit like Jesus. All right, so let's start to go into the Dalets, and we're going to connect all of these dots together. If you guys will be patient, you guys will be patient. Hallelujah. All right, so let's see here. I'm just going to show you a quick little video, another one that will be on. That's right. This is what I want to show you. Okay. So here's some more videos. Can you see this? I think I might have to stop the share and just share like this. Yeah, I have to share these two. All right. So here's an interesting video on the Nubians. Okay. So these are more like East Indian Nubians. Okay.
Alright, so I'm going to shatter your world in thinking that all pitch black people portrayed in hieroglyphs means that they must be African looking or they must be Nilote, etc. I'm going to change your perspective on that. Now watch this, okay? This is my grandfather, okay? He's very dark, as you can see in this photo, right? We could both agree if this man was alive in the ancient times, he probably would have been mentioned looking like this. But here's the catch. My grandfather has some qualities that you would probably deem as non-African. Like, for example, he has straight hair. And so does all of his siblings.
Humans on earth to possess 100% of a human's DNA. Everybody else have some animal and beast in them. That's why their hair don't grow like our hair. That's why their hair grows straight like a monkey. It goes straight like a dog. It goes straight like a sheep. They don't nap, it don't kink, it don't kank.
My grandfather also has blue eyes, which is something not common in the African theme. But if my grandfather was alive during the ancient times, you would have probably mistaken him for a Nilo or an African looking person. But in my recent TikToks, my grandparents have both been called an Arab. But if you guys are going to call these people an Arab, what's stopping you from calling Ahmad Nefertari an Arab? Because they got the same kind of skin tone. But you're not, because you want to fantasize that the ancient Nubians were African looking or Africans, etc. That they looked like you and not the modern population of Nubia today. Because people want to steal our history. Do you see what I'm saying? As you can see, a Hotep depiction of Queen Amanirenas of Nubia versus how she actually depicted herself. Two completely different depictions. And remember that even ancient Nubians back 4,000 years ago had West Eurasian mixes in them, which means that they were closer to Europeans than they were to actual Africans. And guess what? Even ancient DNA is actually very close to modern Nubian populations, not to the people that want to steal the history. And remember, Nubians came in all shades. These two are my dad's full siblings, and one is light and one is dark. So yeah, so just know that.
Okay. Interesting, right? So here's another video.
Alright, so let me explain to you why the ancient Egyptians would look like Sudani people today. For one, I don't know if you knew this, right? But the ancient Egyptians did intermarry with the ancient Nubians. They've also been intermarrying for a very, very long time. Even the combination of burial practices suggests that there were intermarriages between Nubians and Egyptians. And on top of that, the Nubians and the Egyptians did share and adopt many aspects of one another's culture. And even till now, they're still intermarrying with one another. For example, this is the president of Egypt, Anwar Sadat, with his mother, and she's actually from Dungula, the northern part of Sudan. So marriages like this has been happening for a very, very, very long time. And even ancient Nubian DNA also suggested that they had West Eurasian DNA in them, which was the result of Nubians intermarrying with the ancient Egyptians. Which is why right now, if you look at the Fallahin of Egypt, right, they look Sudani. Like this man, for example, could go to Sudan and pass Sudani. This guy as well, he could also go to Sudan and be passing as a Sudani. But these new Egyptians do not, obviously, because these people are mixed with other things. Before you say anything, this is Rushdie Abaza, who is from the Abaza family, and they're Caucasian. So of course these people would not look Sudani. But the other Egyptians could pass as a Sudani. Like this person right here, right? Where do you think he'd be from? I'll give you 5 seconds. This person is actually Northern Sudani. Alright, how about this person? Where is this person from? This person actually is Egyptian. So this Sudani person could go to Egypt and be mistaken for Egyptian, and the Egyptian guy could go to Sudan and be mistaken for Sudani. So yeah.
He's obviously not taking into account nationality versus genetics, although he is kind of speaking about it. But clearly, if we're talking about the Sudan or regions around there, we're talking about Shemitic people mixing with Hamitic people, okay? But you see how dark these Hamites are, right? And then some of them have blue eyes, he's saying. Okay, and if you actually go to this guy's video channel, he actually, he looks like an Ethiopian, okay? But yeah, so this is Nilotic, all right? And they look completely East Indian. Okay, now he's saying, oh, look at these Europeans, though. They're not really, you know, but it's like, that's Cain. That's also Ham, the Canaanites. That's why that Gilgamesh is looking so European, although he's Kush. So he's kind of like, because Semiramis, which she birthed Tammuz, Semiramis, and I don't mean to say her, Abba, forgive me, S-I, you know what I'm saying. Anyway, she is a Canaanite. So his mother was a Canaanite. And that's why he was a mighty man. He was a giant. His father was a Cushite, but his mother was a Canaanite. Okay? So that's why Nimrod was a giant. And that's why he wanted to build the tower to go up to heaven and invade it so that the fallen ones could take over heaven again, because he got his spirituality from his mother. Right? So he rebelled against Yah. Okay? But you see what they look like. You see how dark they are, the Escidians, right? And they are called Nilotics, or they're called, this is what this guy is calling them, Nubians. All right? So again, reclaiming, the East Indians are reclaiming their Egyptian identity. And so even though we see the image of the Babylonian, really Babylon, Egypt, same thing, right? Same family, right? Ham. So even though we're talking about Nimrod, who is really the first king of Egypt, and then it's, Esau Edom really inherits it. This is why they have him looking so Euro-East Indian. Now, we're going to get into all of this stuff about the Dalets now. Because I'm sitting here, I'm in Vancouver, and I'm listening to, what's her name, Palki Sharma, talking about one day, a couple of weeks ago, about all this stuff going on with the Sikhs. And at the Canadian consulate, the Sikhs, there's tons of East Indians here in Vancouver. I'm like, why are you hating on the Sikhs? Like they're hating on the Sikhs. And I'm like, what is it about them? And I'm like, is that where the Dalets are? Right? You can't really, it's hard to find a connection between the Sikhs and the Dalets. But there is one. Because you're like, why? And so there's all these news pieces now on the East Indian channels, like especially on First, on her channel, they're now talking about the Pakistanis constantly going, what are they doing, and how they were siding a little bit with China, right? Like they're creating other alliances away from the East Indians, right? And this is really bothering the East Indians. Why? Because they're Hindus. They're Hindus. So there's a difference with these people. So when you're talking about the Hindus, you're talking about the Aryans. And so the Aryans are closer to the Canaanites. So they have been running the East Indians for a long time. So we're going to get into the Dravidians and who they are. Here's just like a little fragment of information. Family, how are you? Are you able to follow me? Are you finding this interesting? I mean, I find it interesting. Let me just see where you guys are and how you. Shalom, fam. So nice to see you. All right. Yeah, exactly, Sister Light. Looking just like JC, right? But remember, this is what did Charles Schwab say about the narratives, right? Yes, Lorraine Owens. Shalom. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So now we're going to get into a long segment, family, on the Dalets. It's going to be fascinating. Fascinating. Okay. So I'll do my little intro piece for it to get you guys like my little taster, the appetizer, bringing it around. Have a sip of your, enjoy your sparkling wine or your sparkling water, whatever you're drinking. And I'm going to bring you over an appetizer. Because this is just fascinating. I mean, I'm just fascinated by this stuff. I'm like, who is everybody and what's going on? You know me, family. I just find it really fascinating. And we're going to talk about, it's like I want to talk about the Canaanites, right? I'm fascinated with the Canaanites. And let me tell you guys, I'm going to get into my testimony later, but you wouldn't believe what Yah asked me to do. It's like, I think the testimony is going to flesh out in like about 6 months or so. All right. So let's, should I show you guys first? Let's do your little teaser. Give you some information so you can connect the dots. All right. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen this, and I've already talked about this in my own videos, but we're just a little refresher. Where is it? I got it here. No, that's the wrong video. Sorry, fam. I'm trying to put up this one. Greatness. Something greatness. Got a lot of videos now. Is this it? Let's see. All right, this looks like it. Okay, take a look at this.
India used to be called, long time ago, Eastern Ethiopia. Everybody knows that, right? No? Yes. Okay. Yes. Yes. You also probably heard there is a big river in India called Ganges. Okay. To be frank, till 2 years back, I did not know what the meaning of the word Ganges. I simply know Ganges is Ganges. Do you know the name Ganges is one of the strongest and famous emperors of Ethiopia? That's right. Do you think some crazy Aryans would name a big river in India after an African emperor? Would not. Simple logic says that.
All right, family. But what do we know about Genghis Khan, right? Genghis Khan. So, but when we remember that history with Genghis Khan, right? He was a mix of what? Probably Esau and the Arabs, or the Shemites, etc., with the Canaanites. Okay. But it gets a little murkier here because apparently he was an African king, is what this guy describes him as. So this is a little bit of a tweak on the history. You know, I can't say for sure, because what we know is that Esau Edom, when he started to take over, and he was still, you know, obviously he had the same agenda as the, you know, Assyrians, the Shemites in general. And so they were all kind of working together because they're all sold out to Egypt, right? And so they were up in that area as well. You know, around these times, Israel was scattering. And so this guy, we're going to listen to the history. He's going to mention the Dravidians, which sounds like Davidians, David, right? Dawidians, right? So it sometimes, and I'm going to ask you to consider this, I don't know for sure, family. I don't know for sure. But Jacob is the former of all things. So it may be that, and it usually happens that some great king, like a Dravidian king, right? A Dawidian king, right? Came through, right? Scattering, running. And because we know they did it in Malaysia, we know they did it in Thailand, we know they did it in the Philippines. They were scattering, right? To the four corners of the earth. So when they were on the run, they ran through and set up kingdom and got knocked down, and some planted there, scattering to the four corners. And so I'm going to ask you to consider whether or not the term was first applied to a son of David. And then you know how all the other nations come running behind and say, well, we're Genghis too. We're Genghis Khan. Because it's Genghis Khan. It's not Genghis. This is just Genghis, which is what? The Bantu's word for spiritual leader, spiritual teacher. So they always talk about Genghis on. So it seems like and remember, there was a transition where Israel would do the scattering, Esau would come in, Dan would come behind and steal a bit, toss it off to Esau, Esau would steal a bit, and then the Khan started taking from Esau, right? So was this, I can't answer this, family, but it's a question for you. And put it in the chat, tell me what you think. Was this the first Genghis? Gangas? Was this the first Gangas of all that everybody then ran in and imitated the title of or the function of? Okay, so let's start watching the video. I may have one little more one for you. Let me just double check here. Just double check because I found a lot of really interesting stuff. Should I show you this first? Yeah, maybe I should because we're talking about the Canaanites. So let me get past this just so that we can go right into we can just focus on the Dalets and then I can refer back to this. And although I'm referring back to it, you will have already seen it. And here, of course, as well, is further evidence to the Ethiopias, there being free Ethiopias. Share these two. So what is this? All right, so we're going to share that after. So 3 Ethiopias. This is in this book, History of the Indies. And we find there's an Antarctic Ethiopia there. And so this is the journey of, I don't know if it's the author of the book, but he says, when I pass to the Indies, I will tell you what I chanced unto meet, having read what the poets and philosophers write of the burning zone. So they called kind of South America the burning zone. It probably had to do with the equator and so on. And I persuaded myself that coming to they called it to the equinoctial. So this is where the day is divided. So this would be the equator, right? And so they talk about going to this burning zone, which is like South and Central America. The burning zone, some parts are very temperate as Quito and on the coast plains of Peru, and some parts very cold as at Potosi, and in some very hot as in Ethiopia. As in Ethiopia. Some parts are very hot as in Ethiopia. Brazil and Molucca. So the context is still South America. So more confirmation, that is Ethiopia. All right. And Ethiopia is associated with the Shemites. Okay. Then it says Plato places this most renowned Atlantis island under the burning zone. So this is where the time shift is, the equilux, the equinox, South Central America, center of the world line. Okay. So the equatorial circular line. All right. Then he saith that at certain seasons of the year, it hath the sun for zenith. Okay, so that's the highest point in the earth, right? So it'd be central. And yet, it is very temperate, fruitful, and rich, Pliny saith, at this day. And then I gotta shift over here, family. And then it says, so it's talking about that zone, all right? At this day, sorry, fam, I just don't want to lose. They call, and so the area is called Sumatra, and it's under the equinoctial, as in effect, it is writing that it does not only happy rich, hold on a second. What did I say? Sumatra. Oh, shoot. Is this the right one? Oh no, that's one of my references. Okay, so there's another one. Sorry, fam, I got you guys the wrong one. But at least you got to see that. Because the one I'm looking for talks here on this page that this is the Antarctic. Let me find it for you. Let me see if I can find it real quick because I don't want to deprive you. It's pretty exciting. You see how much information though I'm going through? It's like, do you think I can organize this stuff? No. I try, but no. So when I have to go back and find something, it's like, oh my gosh. All right. No, I can't organize this information. All right. Let me see. Where did I do with it? I have to go and find it on the desktop. You know what I'm going to do while I'm looking for this? I'm going to start to play the video that I'm presenting, the main video. And then that way, you guys can listen to that while I look for this, and then we're not getting too caught up. Oh, this other video, it's not the main video, but this is the video about Canaanites in Africa. And, you know, I've seen a lot of people talk about this, and they're really like offended. They're really like, you know, how could they say that white people originated in Africa? And you know, they didn't. But this is Canaan in Africa from way back in the day. And so there's a video saying, you know, well, here's the video, fam. And so you can see Simon Webb, the forgotten white slave trade of Africa. So you might see a video like this and be all offended and say, oh no, they're going to say that the white people are African and this, that, and the third. Or you may be like, oh, you think that, you know, America is Africa, is, you know, Israel, you know, you may be saying something like that. But no, I'm showing you this because I just want to confirm Canaan, in the land of Canaan, before Abraham got there. Okay. So a lot of people think this guy's really, you know, racist or whatever, but he had some interesting stuff to say. He just has his perspective. You know, these are the Canaanites. They try to get in every corner, crook, alley, cranny to get in. And so here they are doing it again. But you know what? Yah promised to save the Canaanites too, right? He decided to mix the seed of man and beast in order to redeem these people. I mean, if they're wicked, they're wicked. But if they're righteous, right? Is it their fault their parents were fallen angels? I mean, go and ask Judah's firstborn son. Or is he thirdborn son? He's a Canaanite, right? So, all right, let's hear what this guy has to say. But, you know, I don't love him, but he has interesting information. I mean, I guess, yeah. So let's play it.
Slavery was endemic in the whole of Africa. The situation used to be in Africa. Black people were always a minority in Africa in historical times. We tend to think now of Africa as being a country of black people, a continent full of black people. It's not true. At one time, there were three different types of people living in Africa. There were the Berbers, who lived in the Sahara before it became a desert. They were white people, and they lived in North Africa. In the south, there were the Khoisan, what sometimes known as the bush people. Yeah. They lived over most of Africa, right as far north as Uganda, Kenya, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, South Africa. There weren't any black people living there. There were only the Khoisan people living there.
So were they white, these Bushmen?
They were white people. They were white people, and they had an oriental appearance, had epicanthic eye folds. They looked Asian. Oh. These were the original humans. These were the first Homo sapiens that came into Europe.
Okay, so he's calling the Khoisan white people. Okay, and they do look they're very Chinesey. As a friend of mine likes to say chinoisy. That's a French word for Chinese. So they look very chinoisy. Okay, and they're pale. Now he's calling them white people. He means white soul. Okay, he means descendants of the fallen, the whites, the great whites. Okay, fallen angels. All right, the aliens. And so he's calling them white people. Now, an uneducated person, there's people in Africa, teaching stuff, trying to confuse everybody. Those are black people. And it's not talking about skin color. We're talking about race. We're talking about tribe. Okay. So you guys, I've done a million videos on this over the last 5 years about the Khoisan being Canaanites. And that's what they are. They're Canaanites. We already gone over it. Sino is Canaanite. And so this is what they look like back in the day, right? This is what they look like back in the day. And these are the tribes that maintained, these are the Canaanites dwelling in the land. And these are the tribes that maintained, these are the tribes, family, that maintained the skin color in Africa. The other ones got scattered, right? Because Israel drove them out. And so they got paler, especially with their practices, right? Their satanic practices, which bleach you out, right? And as well as with the gene splicing going on with their parents doing all their experiments, right? But these are the original Canaanites. That's what they would have really originally looked like before they got paler, right? Okay, so let's keep going.
They're still living on reservations in places like Botswana. About 2,500 years ago, a group of black people called the Bantu, who were living in West Africa, started to expand outward. They started farming and they began to expand outward into the rest of Africa, and they conquered or exterminated everyone that came into their path or enslaved them if there were any survivors. So they enslaved
Okay. Did they enslave the Canaanites? Or did the Canaanites lie to them and say, we're from a far off country, right? Let me look it up. I look up the scripture. Let me look up the scripture for you, family. Oh, I should be looking for that other reference. I just get too into it. This is what they said. And made a treaty, right? Isn't that what they did? They said, we have the Gibeonite treaty, okay? Joshua 9, right? I'll just read it. You don't need to see it, okay? And it came to pass when the inhabitants of Gibeon, so Joshua 9, heard that what Joshua had done to Jericho and Ai, they worked craftily. These are crafty people. We're going to get into some of the most crafty among them. We're going to get into Gandhi, Mr. Crafty one, all right? So Mr. Crafty, these Gibeonites, right? They saw what Joshua had done to Jericho and Ai, and they worked craftily and went and pretended to be ambassadors and took old sacks on their donkeys, old wide skids torn and mended, old patched sandals on their feet, and old garments on themselves. And all, of the bread of their provision was dry and moldy. And they went to Joshua, to the camp at Gilgal, and said to him, we've come from a far country. Now, therefore, make a covenant with us. Now they are from the land of Ham, which is a far country. However, they haven't been living there for a long time, right? They're living in the land of Shem, calling it the land of Canaan, right? And all the men of Israel said to the Hivites, perhaps you dwell among us, so how can we make a covenant with you? But they said, oh, we are your servants. We'll be your servants. That's what he's talking about. Israel didn't need any servants. Israel serves themselves. Yes, they made the stranger among them, they redeemed them, right? But their inheritance in Israel was the same. Okay, so they didn't really have slaves. This is why they were enslaved, according to Joshua 9. Who are you and where do you come from? Very far country. Our servants have come because the name of Yahuwah your Elohim. And we heard about everything you did to Og, king of Bashan, and we brought this bread was hot when we took it. Now it's all moldy. So they took some of their provisions and did not ask counsel of Yahuwah. That was the problem. And it happened 3 days after they made the covenant with them, skipping down to verse 16, that they heard that they were their neighbors who dwelt near them. And the children of Israel journeyed and came to their cities on the third day Now their cities were Gibeon, Cherikah, Beeroth, Kiryah, Yearim. But the children of Israel did not attack them because the rulers of the congregation had sworn to them by Yahuwah Elohim, and all the congregations complained against the rulers. And they're like, well, we swore to Yah. And then so Joshua went for them and said, why have you deceived us, saying we're from very far from us? And then now therefore you are cursed, and none of you shall be freed from being slaves. See? Don't let anybody tell you that you kept the strangers as slaves. Because it says you're cursed, and none of you shall be freed from being slaves. This is why their hatred and desire to permanently enslave Israel. Because when they did that, they got cursed to always be slaves. Woodcutters, water carriers for the house of my Elohim. So they became woodcutters and carriers of water. So, all right. So let's keep going.
Pygmies, they killed all the Khoisan, except for a few of them that they used as slaves. And it was the Bantu that conquered Africa. That's why we think of Africa as being a nation where black people live.
But it's not always been the case.
No, of course not.
Okay, I mean, even that, I'll be honest, I didn't know that, you know. I mean, I'm showing my ignorance, but I guess if I'm saying that, there's many people who have also had that sort of airbrushed out of their understanding.
Sure.
See, so we're all done with that video. So that's the Canaanite story. It's right. He's correct. Unfortunately, it's not their land. It's the Bantu's land. That's just what happened when Abraham came back to the land, but this is how they tell it. That's just their perspective. So when you're looking at Nimrod, I want you to think about these people. Obviously, this is a Canaanite, right? Who's telling the story to this other guy, right? So he's telling the truth. He's just telling it from his perspective, right? Am I right? You think so, family? Or am I just completely off course, crazy? You know, I don't think so. I think that this is just to be fair and to be just and honest. I think that that's really what's going on. It is. And so notice how he talked about the Asian eyes and the eye folds and this, that, and the third. So, all right, let's keep going. We're going to get into this video. Here's a really, really interesting thing. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna play the video, and I'm going to, like I said before, but I didn't do, I'm going to keep looking for that Ethiopian reference. So let's get into this. All right. We're going to be going for a while, fam. So let's see. Okay, Aramachi is saying, wow. Kelly Perry is saying, shalom. Yeah, you're right. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, fam. It's just so true. It's just crazy, right? Ooh. Oh, goodness. Okay. All right. Now on my other channel, family, just while we're doing a little switcher break here, I am going to be trying to get into more lifestyle type stuff, farming and that kind of stuff, because I have to get out onto the land. Crikey. Oh, here it is. Okay. All right. Let's go. Okay, let's go. I'm in this study with this Gentile lady, and she's so lovely. And she says, oh, my Lanta. She says, oh, my Lanta. It's very funny. Okay, hold on one second. All right, I was going to start with this because this is really interesting. Should I give this to you guys, a little teaser, appetizer, because I didn't get that Ethiopian thing out in time? No, I'll do the introduction and we'll build up to it. Big surprise, big surprise. All right, let's listen. Can you guys?
There are two well-defined black races. One has black skin and woolly hair. The other has black skin, often exceptionally black, with straight hair, aquiline nose, thin lips, and an acute cheekbone angle. we find a prototype of this race in India, the Dravidian. It is also known that certain Nubians likewise belong to the same Negro race, as this sentence by an Arab authority, Idrisi, indicates, quote, "The Nubians are the most handsome of the blacks. Their women have thin lips and straight hair," unquote. So hopefully with that as a background, when you see someone standing here that does not fit into the stereotype of what we are accustomed to and tell you, well, I'm an African, you just would not flip. Because this is the job that has been done with us. In bringing this brother here today, he will blow a lot of myths. And the information that he will share with us today, no one leaving this forum will leave the same way they came in. To give you some background, who is Velu Annamalai? Well, Velu Annamalai was born in a small village near the southern tip of India in a state called Tamil Nadu. Both of his parents never went to school and they were financially poor. They were deprived of all social, cultural, educational, and simple human rights by the Brahminical Hindu caste system because they were born untouchables. Dr. Annamalai obtained a bachelor's degree in engineering and went to West Germany for 2 years training. He returned to Madras, where he taught in an engineering college for 3 years before coming to the United States in 1969 for higher education. He received his master's degree in metallurgical engineering in 1972 from the Colorado School of Mines and then went back to India to teach for another 3 years. He returned to the States again in 1975 for his PhD.
Okay, so those are his credentials.
With the help of Brother Runoko Rashidi, Dr. Annamalai started the International Dalit Support Group. The purpose of this organization is to educate and disseminate information on the black untouchables of India to the African community over here. There are over 200 million untouchables suffering under the yoke of the Hindu race and Hindu race.
200 million untouchables called Dalets. 200 million of the diaspora enslaved in India. 200 million.
And the international community completely ignores it because these people are considered to be black and polluting. Sisters and brothers, just as a background, I'm going to ask you to bring forward this brother.
All right, so we're going to go into the part he already talked about,
that India used to be called long time ago Eastern Ethiopia. Everybody knows that, right? No? Yes. Okay. Yes. Yes. You also probably heard there is a big river in India.
So as we said before, so we'll just skip past this. So now I'm going to go into the entry of the Africans here. Okay?
Here. Okay. So I'm not trying to go into the details, archaeological details. I will leave that to Brother Runoko Rashidi when he comes next. But the original inhabitants or the original creators of the Indus Valley civilization, which is also called Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, or Harappan civilization, was created by the black man. People came from Africa. About 7,000 BC, which is 9,000 years back.
So they got the timeline wrong.
Maybe even earlier than that. They brought agriculture. They domesticated most of the animals. They were highly civilized. They had two-story buildings, sanitation systems, sewage system. They had a built-in screening system in the sewage so the solids would not block the liquid passage. They had chutes so they can drop the garbage from the upper level to lower levels. They had individual wells. They had courtyards. Highly civilized conditions they were living. They're very peaceful agricultural people. Very well flourishing civilization. This is the original black people. Then about, I think, 5000 BC.
So those are the Shemites. They're going to be the Shemites. That's the land of Shem because it's Ethiopia.
Small groups of people from Mediterranean started coming into Indus Valley. The Indus Valley I'm referring right now, if you could imagine Pakistan. And that is where the original Indus Valley people lived.
Pakistan. Pakistan. So that's where the Sikh come from. The Sheikhs, the Sikhs come from Pakistan. This is where they lived, just like I said.
Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, those are two main cities that they lived. And that was not discovered till, I think, 1846 or something by the British. Before that, we did not even know that we had a civilization. The British, obviously, they were trying to build railway lines and they stumbled into the civilization. When these Mediterranean people came, they mingled with the local black people. And obviously, there is a certain amount of intermingling and maybe a slight change in features. That is the people they started calling themselves Dravidians. Maybe brother Inuni might be able to give a little detailed definition as what the Dravidian means. I'm not quite sure, even though I call myself a Dravidian.
Okay, so from what I know, I think from Ronald Dalton, is that these are Davidians.
But anyway, that is how the word Dravidian came into picture. To me, Dravidian and a black are one and the same. As a matter of fact, that is how it is being used in the Vedas and scriptures of the Hindu religion, which I'll go into a little later. Okay. And even today, in India, normally the dark-skinned people are referred as Dravidians. Okay. When these Dravidians were living comfortably, about 3000 BC, between 3000 and 2000 BC, nomadic white Aryans came from the Central Asia. They were looking for food. They were just wandering around. They were huge, big people. The one thing, sadly, they had is they domesticated horses, which the Dravidians did not. With the horsepower of being nomadic, barbarians, they had all the skills of killing and beating. So when they walked into Indus Valley civilization, they found a glorious people living. So first thing they wanted to do is to conquer the people and to learn and to possess everything what these people had. A conflict took place, a war took place. It went on for several hundred years. Obviously, when the people came, when the Aryans came, there is no very clear-cut statistics how many women came with them. The perception is that not too many women they brought with them, the white women. So there is already a mixing of color started.
Okay, and so interesting. Do you guys think that these Dravidians, put it in the chat or do some research. That's what I remember, but I've got so much to share with you that I'm just gonna move on. But I would like to see it in the chat. So what you think? So now we're going to go into this whole dharma karma thing, because what we're going to see is the way that they're treated is very similar to what is described in Deuteronomy 28 as the curses of Deuteronomy, and people having to work off their karma. We're going to see a parallel as well with Christianity that he's going to make. Okay, so let's move on ahead.
Okay? But that doesn't stop right there either. You better not question that again. Why you are in that position. If you question, you'll make the God angry, and why, if a guy says, why I have to be a carpenter, why can't I be the priest? Then he comes around and tells you, that is because of your karma. What is karma? You did something bad in your last life, so the God is punishing you this life.
So he's describing the caste hierarchy, and of course the Dravidians aren't even named in the hierarchy. The Dalets. There's only 4 groups in the hierarchy, and they're not even named as a people. They're considered what? According to scripture, not a people. Yah says, I will call those who are not a people my people, and I will call those who are my people not my people. We know that the Khazars and everything, that they came on horses, right? And so these are the Aryans, these are the Canaanites coming in, take them over. And what were the Canaanites called? Not a people. Spittle. So now they're calling them not a people. So they're not even in the caste system. They're just on the bottom. They're done. And so they have been given this hierarchy where they're told they have bad karma that they have to work off, and their reward is in heaven.
Okay? But that doesn't stop right there either. You better not question that again. Why you are in that position. If you question, you will make the God angry, and next life you're going to be worse than this. Very smart people. Extremely smart people. So everybody... Crafty people, not smart. Did their job with a smiling face. It doesn't matter what the job is. Agreeing to be a slave, enjoying the slavery. So that's what we call in India, where the slaves enjoy slavery. Because they think they're serving God. But it took 3,000 years for me to get up and said, which God? Let me find out which God he is. Who made me be an untouchable? Tell me what I did in my last life. I sure want to find out. Okay. I sure want to talk to that God. Maybe I'll shoot him.
So obviously they can't. These people consider themselves gods, or they say they commune with the gods, but nobody can tell them. Anyway, so here's how bad it is, though. All right, let's show you, like, for the women.
The word for 3,000 years. We can study. We can read, write. We can't even, our women cannot even cover their body.
So during slavery, you're not allowed to read, you're not allowed to write, right? And now he's saying the women can't even cover their body.
And we cannot even wear any dress like the other man. I'll go back later on and read some of the scriptures, which is the holy books of Hindu holy books, where it says an untouchable, the dress of an untouchable has to be the dress of the dead corpus. That is, the holy book says that. The Hindu holy book says that. And these people are supposed to eat only from broken pots.
All right, so here we have 2 principles in scripture, right, family? Where the carcass is, the eagles will be gathered. All right, so Israel's destroyed, no longer a people. They are not a people, and they're dead, really, to Yah. So where the carcass is, the eagles are gathered. Okay? And so they're always using these words that call right back to scripture about these people. And they're only allowed to eat with broken pot shards, pieces of broken pottery. That's what Job used to scrape all the disease off his skin. That's all they're supposed to use. What happened in the potter's house? Shall the potter say to the clay, why hast thou made me thus? This is broken. What do you do with pottery that can't be thrown into the kiln again? All you can do is cast it away. So this is Israel cast away, and all they can eat is their broken pottery, and they're just eating with broken pot shards, like shards of glass, shards of pottery. Okay, if you're not hearing what I'm saying. All right. And so what happened was the British came in, and they basically wanted to free everybody and call everybody the same. So that they just called everybody Hindus. And they tried to liberate people, actually, more so than the Hindus. But it didn't quite work out. So let's go into that. Let him explain it better than me. This is more of the history.
Wrote everybody Hindus. So that is how everybody is called Hindus. If you read any article in New York Times about India, they would say India has 85% Hindus, which is absolutely false. So tomorrow, if you happen to see an Indian on the street, if you ask him what religion do you follow, if he says Hinduism, you should say, you mean to say Brahminism? He may not even know, or he may not agree with you. Because systematically, for all these years, the Indians or the Hindus have cheated the international community about what's going on in India. The caste system, the untouchability, it is so prevalent, so rampant, so barbarous, so evil, but it's all done in the name of religion. So nobody talks about it. And then it's controlled by the white man. The international press is controlled by the white man. So nobody can talk about it. The New York Times press reporter goes to India. The first guy meets him as a Brahmin. So Brahmin feeds him some trash. This guy brings the trash and spits out here. That's what's going on. Okay. So we are now trying to bring some truth in what's going on. Okay. I'm going to go back and
okay. So now we already had Herodotus' statement about Ethiopia. And I do have more information on the Peru thing, but I don't want to get too off topic, so I'll show it to you again as to the other Ethiopias. But let me just see if I should show you this. Just see what it says.
They gathered around and asked, tell us about this great land of blacks called Ethiopia. And Herodotus says there are two great Ethiopian nations, one in Sind, meaning India, and the other is in Egypt. So, and there's an excellent article. There are a few mistakes, but I think that we can ignore that.
All right, so this is Herodotus again. He states that there are two Ethiopias. Let me play that again because he shows the book. And I don't have it here. I want you to get the reference.
Connection, the Dravidian connections. But I want to quote one starting with the Wayne Chandler, Brother Wayne Chandler's article. He brings Ethiopia and India together in this quote. And upon his return to Greece, they gathered around and asked, tell us about this great land of blacks called Ethiopia. And Herodotus says there are two great Ethiopian nations, one in Sindh, meaning India, and the other is in Egypt. So, and there's an excellent article. There are few mistakes, but I think that we can ignore that.
All right, so let me show you this. Just further proof. Let's see here. Share. I'm going to look for more of these pieces out of the book just as we're watching the video so you guys can. Come on now. Share two screens. All right. So this one says, yes. So same book as before. Take it back and screenshot it. Natural History of the Indies by Jose Acosta. You can see it at the top here if you're wondering where it is. All right. The witch is reported of Ethiopia, and we have seen it in a great part of Peru. Let me repeat that. The witch is reported of Ethiopia. This is the third Ethiopia. So one's in what we now know as Ethiopia. The other one is India. And this one, which is in Atlantis, near the region of Atlantis, is near Peru, which is reported of Ethiopia, and we have seen it in a great part of Peru. So Ethiopia is in a great part of Peru, where all that land or coast, which they call Ilanos, just zoom in on it. I'm having trouble reading it. Oh, I can't. It's a screenshot. Oh my gosh, fam. Oh my gosh. That's funny. Okay. All right, fam. Which they call Ilanos. Wants rain, yeah, land waters, except some valleys where rivers fall from the mountains. The rest is sandy and barren. So this is just a description of the land, like it's about temperatures and what is the equator area is like, what the equinoxal area is like. Okay. Let me find you guys another one. Maybe I'll find you these for breaks. I'll keep playing these little nuggets I want you to get from him on the Dravidians. So anybody who's just come in, we're talking about India reclaiming its heritage in Africa, or its heritage as Egypt. And are they, focusing on Egypt and Africa so that they can have a place in Africa? But there are other videos, again, now talking about the Grand Canyon being the original Egypt of India. We're also talking about how the Hamites are KUSH, PHUT, etc. But that kings like Nimrod were part giant, part Semiramis, all right? And so even in this book that I'm showing you, they talk about Sumer originally being in these areas, okay? All right, in the areas of Central and South America, okay? So that's really where the Canaanites are from. All right, so let's keep going with this. So now we're going to talk about how now the Aryans are starting to say that they're indigenous to India, okay? But India is actually, as he said at the beginning of the video, is Ethiopia, and it is originally African, okay? Remember, they were scattered there by Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar brought them there, the Shemite, okay? He brought all the Hamites there, scattered them there, and so did the Europeans, scattered them there, okay? All right, so now they're trying to say, it's amazing how they twist this history, because we're even going to get into one of their Sikh, and so we're talking about how the Sikhs are really the Dravidians, and this is why the rest of India is so against them and are always targeting them. I was saying that there was this big thing here in Vancouver. The Sikh community is huge here at the Indian embassy, with the Sikhs protesting at the Indian embassy here. Okay, and they seem to be trying to side with other nations, like with China against, because India is kind of has a bit of a contention with China because they're kind of more favored by Russia than the Indians are. So now the Pakistanis are kind of going, hey, China, maybe we'll be more friends with you since the rest of India doesn't like you. So the rest of India is run by the Hindus. All right. So it's Hindus versus Dravidians. They're all in the land of Shem, calling it Ham's land, but it's not really. America is Ham's land. Australia is Ham's land. Okay. But anyway, let's get back to this. So now the Aryans who invaded, which they're really Canaanites, invaded so-called India, the place where the Hamites were in Shem's land. It's very confusing. Yah is not the author of confusion. We're clear that it was Satan who did all this, right? Confusion. And so now the Aryans are there after we just got that beautiful history about how the Africans, the Gangas established the nation, brought the agriculture, everything there, and the Dravidians, the descendants of Israel, the Dalets came in afterwards, and then in came the Canaanites. Again, because the Canaanites always want the land of Shem. The Aryans, and now they're there, they're now saying they're indigenous to that land, just like the man in the video we just saw, saying that the Canaanites were always there. So here they go again, right? So this is the narrative. I guess this is probably from the 80s, this video, or the 90s. So let's go to 37.
I mean, here, an oppression, systematic oppression going on for 4,000 years, nobody talks about it. What is the reason? 200 million people are suffering today. And nobody talks about it. One of the main reasons is because they were blacks and they are blacks. That is the basis. You may not know that, I may not know that.
Now, I have to say, he said, and I didn't get the point here in this documentary, and you can go and watch it. It's called The Black Dalets you can see the title at the top if you want to screenshot it. So it's The Black Dalets by Dr. Velu Annamalai. Okay. So he said that when they were enslaved, when the Hindus started enslaving everybody, right? The Aryans started enslaving everybody. The Afroed, kinky-haired, chocolate ones of the Dravidians and the Dalits all went and hid in the mountains. So they're in the mountains, apparently, hidden. Okay, that's what he says. But there's still a lot of them out there.
I did not know even know that my ancestry was black. I was not taught that in the school. When I went to school, they talked about Indus Valley civilization, but they never told me that is my ancestors who created this great civilization. Now you know what they're doing? The Brahmins, all these years, they said it is a Dravidian civilization, the black civilization, the Aryans invaded. In the last 2 years, now they say, we found new evidence. That is, no, Aryans were never invaders. Aryans were indigenous people. They found new evidence. Is it that difficult to plant evidences? It is painful. It is painful that they could have the obnoxious mind to twist history, and they are finding people could collaborate with them, and white men in this country. These guys go there, they join some religious cult, and then they come back and say, great religion is great. Don't even know what they are. One time I met an Anglo guy, he said, oh, Hare Krishna, great religion. And I asked him, what's your religion? What's your caste? So he said, you are a Hindu, what's your caste? I don't, what? I said, if you don't have a caste, you're not a Hindu, damn it.
All right, so that is the MO of the Canaanites, right? They're always stealing identities, stealing history. And it's, you know, it's really because they've taken over and they're very rapacious about it, right? But the truth is, you know, when we look at, of course, Jeremiah 31, you will mix the seed of Israel and the seed of, oh shoot, did I? No, I haven't gotten to it yet. Seed of Israel and the seed of Judah with the seed of man and beast. And so it's really that they've been I'm not denying they're crazy. They've been horrible, right? We're in it, right? But they always want to belong. They always want to say that they were here all the time. They were part of everybody else. They're part of the human race. And you honestly have to feel, you see their desperation, right? Because if they can't join the human race, they have to enslave the human. I'm not sure. This is not sympathy for the devil. This is the children of the fallen. They can only enslave everybody and try to eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die eternally. We're going to hell. So if salvation hadn't also come for them, right? All they can do is enslave everybody. And so you see how desperately they're trying to be part of every people group by co-opting the history or mixing in. They're always mixing in with everybody. You see how East Indian he looks, right? To try to save themselves, right? So that's just the truth. All right, so let's get on to, let me see. So yeah, let's get on to some more of this because we're going to get into the horrible Davidasi system. All right. And I'm still looking for that scripture. I mean, that sample from the book. So we're going to see some real Deuteronomy 28 scriptures here, 55, 56.
Garments of the dead, and they shall eat their food from broken dishes. Black iron shall be their ornaments, and they must wander from place to place. This is the Holy Scripture we are talking about. We are not talking about some kind of a pornographic.
So this is what's said about to
kill women.
The Dalets. Okay? This is what's said about the Dalets. That they have to wander from place to place, eat from potsherds. Isn't that true? Wandering Jews? Scattered? Okay? This is what their religion says about how the Dalits should be treated.
And non-Brahmins is not a sin. Here, as I was telling earlier, the dwellings of untouchables shall be outside the village, and their wealth shall be dogs and donkeys. Their dress shall be the garments of the dead, and they shall eat their food from broken dishes. Black iron shall be their ornaments, and they must wander from place to place. This is the Holy Scripture we are talking about. We are not talking about some kind of a pornographic material.
So you will be ashamed.
It's come to Bhagavad Gita, supposed to be the holy book.
You will be a byword among the nations. Okay? So they're referring to their Brahmin book. But it sounds just like what's written in Scripture, doesn't it? All right. So here's a wonderful quote. This really is going to seal the deal as to who these people are, these Brahmins, and tie the Canaanites right back to Nimrod. Okay? Right back to Nimrod.
understanding Vedas. I want to go back one step earlier as to how these four castes are created. The Brahmins are supposed to have come from the head of the god. The second caste, which are the trader caste, they have come from the shoulders of the god. The third caste, which is the warrior caste, have come from the thighs of the god. The fourth, Shudra, have come from the feet of the god.
So you heard that. Okay? Does this sound familiar to you? Sounding familiar, family? Certainly is. These are the Vedas, they call them. Okay? The Vedas. And so this is how the castes are divided. The twice-born Brahmins are the head, the golden head. The next is the Kshatriyas. They are the shoulders. Next are the Vaisyas, right? And they are the legs. And last, the Sudras, who are the feet. The fourth beast, the four kingdoms, right? Of Babylon. Right? Wow. That's what he said. Is that what he said, family? I mean, I think that's what he said. Is that what you think he's saying? Should I go over it again? I mean, I just find this stuff fascinating.
Supposed to have come from the head of the god. The second.
So these are the Vedas. This is the caste order.
One step earlier as to how these four castes are created. The Brahmins are supposed to have come from the head of the god. The second caste, which are the trader caste, they have come from the shoulders of the god. The third caste, which is the warrior caste, have come from the thighs of the god. The fourth, Shudra, have come from the feet of the god. I was wondering where the heck I came from. I'm an untouchable. Pardon?
You say it came from the shoulder.
Right? What do you think, fam? I mean, I think that's pretty. I'm going to check on you in 2 seconds. I'm just going to run the next clip, and then I'm going to come and look at what you're saying. I just have to find the next point. So, we'll look at what Christianity, oh, it's right here, does to their circumstance, because this is a bit of a history here that I'm going through, family, in case you haven't noticed. And once again, we're looking at how India is reinserting itself in as Egypt, and how these videos are coming up about America being Egypt and the Grand Canyon, and we're understanding that the East Indians, really, we're kind of making it clear now that they are the Aryans, the Hindus are actually Canaan, okay? And they are, you know, the Semiramis wife of Nimrod was actually Canaanite. That's why Nimrod was a giant, all right, the first Babylonian king. And so we're just proving all of this. So we're seeing the connection and the difference in the castes. And so the fourth kingdom, all right? So let's just see what this next part has to say, how Christianity affected all of this.
The last one is Shudra, the guy who came from the foot of the Shudras. The Brahmin came from the head. The Vaishyas came from the shoulder. Kshatriya come from one of the guy. It doesn't really matter. Between Kshatriya and Vaishyas, one from the shoulder, another from the thigh.
Oh, so he's trying to teach that, like, oh, we may have got the same point wrong.
My brother, hold your question in comment. You get your turn. You get your turn.
If a Shudra hears the Vedas, his ears will be filled with molten lead.
So these are kind of the punishments. Oh, maybe it's 140 that it's at. Well, basically, I'm just going to explain it because I think I wrote the number down wrong. Basically what happens is that Christianity comes and they, just like they do in America, they create a caste system within Christianity. You know, churches mainly, there's white people there, the Hispanics are in another church, the black people are in another church, you know, same formula, right? Caste system and division. Because the Aryan races have to preserve their races because even though they're still mixing, it has to be controlled, right? But they must preserve their races so they can stay in power, right? Otherwise, they won't be able to stay in power. All right, so we're going to go. Basically, what happens is that they get a savior.
They took, okay, that is a propaganda picture, okay?
So he's talking about the movie Gandhi and how it's a prophet, because we're going to get into Gandhi. So basically, this is their savior who comes along, and his name is Dr. Babib Ambedkar, okay? Dr. Ambedkar, okay? And so he was an untouchable. He got raised in the Hindu schools. Now they're even co-opting his identity, just like they did with Martin Luther King. And they've made his nose more and more aquiline in photos. They'll Photoshop his nose like they did here. And they're saying he was raised as a Hindu, right? And then he decided to side with the religion of the untouchables. That's not true. He was an untouchable, okay? And he went away and studied in America, and then he had to oppose Gandhi. And Gandhi was a Hindu, all right? And just so you know, reminding you guys again, according to the Hebrew, the Dalet means the door, which is the door to the temple of Israel, to the kingdom of heaven, the 12 doors. And so they are untouchable. They are part of the doors. And of course, we have Gandhi, who is part of this crafty council, we're going to find out, because we know how much his nonviolence methodology, how that's benefited Black people here, like in North America, right? All over the world. Not, right? And so, yeah, we're going to get into Gandhi. So, but in, this is what Gandhi hated about him, was that, you know, I'm saying that Gandhi was as subtle a passive aggressive terrorist as the Democrats, like Biden, Obama, and the Clintons, right? You know, basically Biden is allegedly a pedophile, right? I mean, it's, you know, talk about passive aggressive. That's the ultimate passive aggressive, is a pedophile, right? So, and Obama and Kamala. So the crafty council. So in 1936, Gandhi labeled the proposed conversion of 60 million untouchables to Sikh as a dangerous proposal. Well, because then they're no longer untouchables, right? And they actually get to carry what they're known to carry, a sword. In Canada, it's legal for them to carry a knife, a sword, to defend themselves. Okay, so, and then Dr. Ambedkar, after being asked by the Hindus who did not like Gandhi to please convert to any Indian religion, he chose to become Sikh, okay? Because he was so still persecuted. He had to fight for the untouchable nation his whole life. He was very gifted and talented as an attorney, and he actually wound up drafting the Constitution. That's how gifted he was. Not that they followed it. You know how that goes. You know how that goes in America and all over the world. You make changes to laws and no one follows them. So, yeah. So let's listen to what they have to say about Gandhi and how he terrorized these people through his passive aggressive nonviolence, which was selective, and also how it worked in Africa, because that was where he also functioned with that. All right, you try it out on the really robust crowd, and then you import it into your nation, right? So, yeah, and just the crafty counsel, they have taken crafty counsel against thy people, consulted against thy hidden ones. They've said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may no more be in remembrance, for they've consulted together with one consent. They are a confederate against thee. And so let's just watch some more of this video. All right, let me find you guys another. This is really interesting. This is very interesting because they right in front of your face. This is Gandhi right in front of their face called them this.
They also called our people as Harijan. I don't know whether you heard the word. Harijan means.
So this is Gandhi now, family. Gandhi called.
Raped and killed in India. You don't hear about it. These guys don't even would not open their mouth.
So they're talking about, just like in government here, they have all these representatives from the untouchables in government who have no power. They're just sitting there as what do they call it when you're like the stereotype, like when you're there as the minority representative, but you have no power? Same thing with their government. So women are raped and killed, like 20, 30, 40 women. This happens to them and nobody says anything in the parliament, is what he's saying. The government is basically useless. And so this is what Gandhi called the untouchables, okay? This is what Gandhi called the untouchables.
And I attribute that directly to this Gandhi. Gandhi also called our people as Harijan. I don't know whether you heard the word. Harijan means, Hari means God, Jan means children, children of God. Dr. Ambedkar got so mad. I said, don't call our people with any sweet names. Call a slave, the slave will revolt. You call a slave as the children of God, you are taming them a little more, making you a better slave. And that is exactly what he was doing. But in fact, it has got a different connotation. The word Harijan has a different connotation because the Hindu religion has so many evil practices. One of them is to make the young girls and women of untouchable community to be dedicated to the Hindu temples. This is one of the practices. It is called Devadasi system. See, these people, untouchables, are so ignorant, so absolutely uneducated. They think next life is going to be better if this Brahmin tells me whatever I should do. So he says, you have a nice looking girl, so you dedicate her to temple. So she can clean the temple around and dance and entertain the priests. Yes. And the children born out of those relationship, to me, they're called bastards. And they called Harijans. Because the fathers were close to God. And this word was coined almost about 50 years before Gandhi first introduced this word. A poet has already coined this word, calling these children as Harijans, meaning bastards. And Gandhi comes around and calls the entire community as Harijans. So Dr. Ambedkar got mad. I said, don't you ever use this word. And he even passed a resolution in the local parliament. But the Hindus are the majority. They had the power. They introduced it, and we are called Harijans. But today, we don't call that Harijans. We don't even call ourselves untouchables. We use the word untouchables in certain circumstances. They call us untouchable. There is no reason why we should call ourselves untouchables. Okay, so we call untouchables when we come to UN, because that explains the truth, the naked truth. Otherwise, we call us Dalets, meaning broken and crushed. And this word also brought the people together. The reason why India, you know, is a fairly big country. It's not as big as the United States. It's only 1/3 the size. But the population today is almost close to 1 billion. Okay. India is divided by regions. Every region, they speak different languages. So an untouchable from one region has no connection with the untouchable of the other region. That is number one. Number two, the beginning 4 major castes, then the 5th caste is untouchable. Then what they did, the Brahmins wanted to make sure these caste delineation stay within that framework. So they created what is called subcaste, which is caste within the caste system.
Okay, fam. So, sorry, I'm munching on lettuce. So you heard that. They have this Devadasi system. So that's how they would mix with the Brahmins and mix with the women, because they didn't bring a lot of women. Okay? Just like the fallen angels, mainly men bringing the women. Okay? But they're raping the women, right? Just like the fallen angel. And also, so they're basically exploiting the women, right? They're exploiting the women. They're using them to mix with them to build up their bloodline. And they're literally in the face of these people, calling these people, Gandhi's calling them the children of God, but they're using that idea that they're the children of God to exploit them as prostitutes in the temple. Temple prostitutes. Temple prostitutes. The opposite of the Hebrew religion. But you see the relevance, the irony. Just like calling, Black people in America negas, right? Calling them princes right in their face. And they reject the title because then they stamp on the title prince and it's denigrated. So just same mind games, right? Isn't it interesting, family? Like, I'm seeing your comments and stuff here. It's just amazing, isn't it? Really, I tried to get the emails out, family, so I'm glad that you're here. All right, so let's keep going. We're back in here. So, yeah, but that's the Devadasi system. But you see how they take the term Dalit, and it means crushed and broken, when in fact, in the Hebrew, it means door, right? The symbol, it's on the thumbnail for this video. That is a symbol for door in Hebrew. And those are the doors of each of the 12 tribes. All right, so they may not remember who they are, but somehow Yah reminded them. They think it's broken and crushed, but it actually means the doors, the gatekeepers of heaven, right? The 12 tribes. All right, so let's keep it moving. So now you're going to really hear about Gandhi, how absolutely horrible he was. Okay, so we got a little bit more to go here, family. So yeah, let's get into it. So you can see the name of the video up there. If anyone needs it, family, you see Black Dalets by Dr. Velu Hanamali. Okay, so screenshot it. Please don't reach out and ask me for it. It's not that I'm lazy. It's just I just get kind of burnt out with administrative tasks, and I really struggle with them. I'm just, it's not my best point. I'm not organized, so it's hard for me to go back and find things because I'm very disorganized. All right, here we go.
Mahatma Gandhi. But you haven't heard that word from me till now. Because when my savior, my emancipator, called this guy as #1 enemy of the untouchable, why should I call this guy a Mahatma? Mahatma means great soul. He was a great soul. He is a great soul for his race, not for me. For me, he was an evil man. Non-violence. What is non-violence? Nobody defined non-violence. People heard non-violence. Anybody can say non-violence. Probably even Hitler said sometimes non-violence. Does it mean that we need to glorify Hitler? And that's exactly the African American community is doing in this country once a year during Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday. When I came to this country, when I heard that, my blood boiled. My blood boiled. What is it people are doing? I thought the African Americans are better educated compared to the untouchables in India. Are they? I don't know. I don't know. Yes, this guy Gandhi said non-violence. But you know what he meant by non-violence? He said, hey, your master will hit you, but you don't hit him back. That is the non-violence you practice. Be non-violent when somebody hits you. That is the definition of non-violence this Mr. Gandhi used. I do not know whether Dr. Martin Luther King got the whole story or not. Obviously he did not. But that's what Dr. John Henry Clark told me. Because I have a proof. I understand Dr. Clark tried his best to go to Dr. Martin Luther King to tell him the real Gandhi. But there are people around Dr. King who would not allow Dr. Clark to go close to Dr. King to tell the story. But it's time that we get the facts. So what I did, I called the King Center several years back. I said, I want to talk to you guys. They have a room called Gandhi Room in the King Center. I said, I want to tell you the truth about this man. Nobody would talk to me. They told me, no, you need to talk to that person. No, that person's not there, talk to that person. You leave your name and number, we'll call you back. Never got a result. Never got one. This person, I'm going to go back and read again about this Gandhi's non-violence. Because I think when I read something, hopefully it will be more clear than let's see where I got this non-violence. I want to even say a few things about what this Gandhi said about caste system. I can find no reason for their abolition. To abolish caste is to demolish Hinduism. So he knew very well. If he abolish caste system, the Hindu religion will be demolished. So he doesn't want to do that. And he I think at that point I agree that he was an honest enemy. Okay. The most cruel statement he ever made was, if anyone lived in India any length of period, one should know the pathetic condition under which the scavenger people live. Scavengers are the people who clean dry bathrooms, dry latrines, scoop those things into the bucket and carry them on their head and take it farther away from town to dispose them off. I have seen them carrying. Today there are at least 500,000 people doing this job. And many times those baskets will have holes. And sometimes they push a cart on the road and the people will run away from these people because it's so pathetic smell. This is the life of a scavenger. He does it every day, the whole day. And this guy makes a statement, why should my son not be a scavenger if I am one? If I am a scavenger, there's nothing wrong with my son being a scavenger. That is the statement he's made. That is the most cruelest statement ever anybody can make. Any shred of humanity would never make a statement. This statement alone is a proof of how cruel this person was. If I were a doctor, what's wrong with my son being a doctor? I have no problem accepting that statement. If I were a priest, even though that is logically that's not correct, it should be depending upon the head this boy has, what kind of brain he has.
All right, pretty bad, right? All right. $137. They're not allowed to enter Hindu temples.
This guy worked for casteless society. They still make a statement. If you talk to the Hindu here, they'll say, oh, Gandhi worked for caste abolishment. They have not read it. They didn't want to read it. They want to keep on lying. But these are the facts.
Yeah, so he just said that Gandhi said that to demolish the caste system is to demolish Hinduism. That's what Gandhi said.
As a matter of fact, he says, here he says, Shudra who only serves the higher caste as a matter of religious duty and who will never own any property, the gods will shower down flowers on him. This is the icing on the cake. Then he makes a statement, how is it possible that the untouchable should have the same right to enter all the existing temples? As long as law of caste and karma has the chief place in Hindu religion, to say that every Hindu can enter every temple is a thing that is not possible today. This is the non-violent, peace-loving Gandhi. Okay. I think somebody says Gandhi was perhaps 20th century most cunning and crafty fox in a saint's garb. The credit for saving Hinduism and transferring India from British imperialists to more dangerous Brahmin imperialists goes to Gandhi. That's what he did. He killed the untouchables with his kindness. It is a kiss of death. Gandhi was a double-edged weapon. He used religion to fight a political war and to fight the fire of socio-economic struggle. He deceived everybody with sweet words. Non-violence. Was he non-violent? The simplest question to ask, if Gandhi were non-violent, how come during 47, during independence, partition, there are thousands and thousands of people who were killed in India? Anybody who remember the events during 47? Before 47, India was a big country. 47, India became two countries, India and Pakistan. At that time, they had West Pakistan and East Pakistan. Then later on, East Pakistan became Bangladesh. The reason is because those two regions were given for Muslims. Because Muslims wanted to have their own country because they said they couldn't live with the Hindus. So they had, because of their concentration, population concentration, they had West Pakistan and East Pakistan. Then later on, the West Pakistan tried to oppress the East Pakistans, so they had a fight, and India played the devil's role and got Pakistan broken into two pieces. So that became Bangladesh, and this became Pakistan. Okay? But during that time, hundreds of thousands of people were killed. Non-violent, bloodless violence, and then hundreds of people killing. It doesn't make any sense. But you keep hearing these lies again and again and again. He also calls during that time, if the whole of Calcutta swims in blood, it will not dismay me. This is a direct quote from Gandhi. A non-violent person talking like this? Either non-violence has a different definition, or somebody doesn't know what he's talking about. Actually, one person said, it would be difficult to find a more violent person than Gandhi in the history, because most of the violent people declare themselves as violent, except Gandhi, who cheated the entire world, portraying himself as a pacifist. But in fact, he was a hardcore violent person within himself when it came to protecting his evil Hindu caste system. That is exactly the truth. During his stay in South Africa, I want to go back and read a little more in detail, because I think that's the most important thing. Before that, I want to show this book, Gandhi, Saint or Sinner. This is an important book every African American has to read, because this is an absolute documentation of what he did in South Africa. And I'll make sure Brother Ununi has address, or I will try to get these books and give it to them, because this has got documentation. What he said, when he said in South Africa. This, I'll give the details, because I think best thing, because it is available only in India. It's kind of difficult for you individually write them, so what I'm thinking of doing is to get a bulk and send it to here. It's easier because of the exchange rates and the postal system. Half the time your check won't receive, or they'll take the check and they'll say they never got the checks. Okay. He says, during the Gandhi movie, people forgot Gandhi for a long time. And the Indian government, the Indira Gandhi government, to bring his Gandhi back, their Mahatma back, the movie was completely financed by the Indian government. The script was checked and rechecked by the government of India. And the movie was taken. And one commentary about this movie. While Gandhi is being portrayed as a saintly man, a martyr for whom non-violence is constant theme and growing virtue, Gandhi was an opportunist, a late blooming pacifist for whom non-violence was a selective tactic. In fact, during the Kafir wars in South Africa, he was a regular Gangadin who volunteered to organize a brigade of Indians to put down Zulu uprising, and was decorated himself for valor under fire. You should know that. Is it the King Center people can't even get this fact? And I want to quote some of his writing when he was in South Africa. I don't think any of you would want to keep quiet after I read this. He says, ours, that is the Indian upper caste community in South Africa, is one continued struggle sought to be inflicted upon us by the Europeans, who desire to degrade us to the level of the raw Kafir, whose occupation is hunting, and whose sole ambition is to collect a certain number of cattle to buy a wife, and then pass his life in indolence and nakedness.
Okay, so listen, fam. Isn't that what the Hebrews do to get their bride price? Right? To pay for their bride. They got to have their cattle and they got to pay for their bride. So that's all I have for this video. And so just to review, I probably have more information here, so I'm not ready to go yet. But just so I can review for you, family, it's a really interesting video to watch and to really understand.
And I've already sent all these details.
So, and of course, the Black Dalets, which comes from also Black Dahlia, right? So I just want to make sure that I have everything here. We already talked about Nimrod and Semiramis being his mother, okay? And I showed you guys the video. I'll show you some more pictures of the Dalets if I can. Let me just do a share. I'm going to check on you in 2 seconds here. All right, so share this. All right. All right. So we already talked about the Sudan crisis. So you see how East Indian some of them look. What else we got here? We went over these videos where they were talking about how the Smithsonian covered up all of the realities that, you know, the Grand Canyon, that America is Egypt, covered up the giants and the aliens and all the statues. We talked about how the East Indians are now saying that they were put in, oh, I gotta turn on this light, in Egypt. It's a horrible light, isn't it? It's the wrong color. And we're really saying that it seems like the Hindus are Canaanites, okay? They were largely men, and they came and they invaded the people of Kemet, which were mixed in with the Shemites, who were Dravidians, David, and called themselves the Dalets. They now evolved into the Sikh. I tried searching for Sikh and untouchables together. I couldn't find it because they don't call themselves untouchables. They call themselves Sikh. Okay. So, like I said, they ally themselves with China or the enemies of India. Okay. And it looks like the East Indians might be, well, probably in particular the Canaanites. We gave some examples of the Canaanites being original to Africa, saying they were, and that they were enslaved by the Bantus people, which lines up with scripture, right? They were with a white people with white soul, and they said that their ancestors were the Khoisan. And of course, we know the Khoisan let the Afrikaans, right, the Dutch, the Canaanites, back into Africa. They were the ones who gave them the land, and they cite them as being the ones who let them back into Africa in the past. Now in the present, they're saying, yeah, those are our brothers and sisters. Those are the Black Canaanites. Okay. All right. So we went over that. All of this, we were pointing to the coming of the cloned Nimrod. What's his name? Starts with a G. What's his name? Gilgamesh. Okay, that they found this body of Gilgamesh, which just looks like Luca, the famous Luca. I should look up statues of Luca. Looks very. Okay, so let me show you some other articles and stuff, because I did save some more pictures. Caste and race in India. So this was their hero who they wound up actually, they had a Hindu woman seduce him, and he died of disease, like over about 4 years. He met her at the hospital, got married to her, and yeah, that was kind of, no, I'm not looking for one. Sorry, fam. Where is it? Here it is. Let's keep these here just in case. So here is their hero. And see, they're always photoshopping his nose to make it aquiline. They Photoshop it all the time. So there's Dr. Ambedkar, who became Sikh, right? And they're trying to say, oh, he really was raised they're trying to co-opt his identity, just like they did with Martin Luther King. He was really raised as I wonder if it's in this article, as a Hindu, but he chose to be among the people. So they're even stealing his identity. But yeah, so what they did was they had this woman marry him, and he died 4 years later. It's just getting sicker and sicker and sicker. So allegedly, there's a connection there. Yeah, so here's the history again. This is an article you could look at. So these are the Aryan conquerors. So Palki Sharma is a Hindu, but I still, it's like you can't judge. You have to judge individuals. I still like Palki Sharma, but that is their history and their legacy, right? So yeah, this was the ugly reality of black masses. The black masses conquered in India. Okay. All right. So the Sudras are on the bottom, but he said he couldn't find himself there. Right? 10 toes down. The end of the iron won't mix with the clay, right? So, oops, wrong thing. And then we see Nimrod was married to Semiramis, that I showed you guys. I went into Nimrod. There isn't much mention of the marriage to Semiramis. You have to get it out of other books. Just make sure I show you everything. Yeah, and so this is the Sikh transition thing. Sikhs. Because Dr. Ambedkar demanded for separate electorates, rejecting compromises proposed by Gandhi, right, in 1932. So he fought Gandhi all the way, and that's why Gandhi fasted, because this leader of the untouchables wanted Britain to separate them and their government from that of the Hindus. And Gandhi said, we are all one nation. I want us unified. So that's why he did those fasts. Because he was saying the British are trying to disunify us as a people, when in fact he was just trying to maintain the slavehold system where they ran the whole government. All right. So this is some of the history. So you can go and look at this on the Rosanna spokesperson if you want to do a little bit more research. I'm giving you guys these resources. Don't contact me again, because I'm going to lose all this information. Because I don't have enough drive space. I have like an 18 terabyte drive. Okay. And I've run out of drive space. So I can't, it's hard to stay organized. All right, so it's B.R. Ambedkar. And no, he was not a Hindu. He was raised among the Hindus because he had a teacher who saw him as being intellectually very talented and gifted. And he went and studied abroad in America to get studied at, became a lawyer, and came back and served his people with his legal skills. All right, but he got taken down by a Canaanite woman. Isn't that what happened? Isn't that how Tiger Woods lost so much money? Right? Same formula, same formula. Same formula, fam. Right? Same formula. So here's one of the untouchable Dalit women. All right, you see how straight her hair is, but her features are very, they say Negro, but it's like, you know, family, there are a lot of Black people with small noses, really small noses. You know, I mean, I have a girlfriend who's like midnight black. And her hair is the wooliest hair I've ever seen in my life. And she has the smallest, one of the smallest noses. You can look at some of the Somalians. Now they're Canaanite too, but because those are some of the descendants of Edom. But yeah, so there's one of the Dalets. This has been interesting for you, family, to discover, you know, what's going on with these nations. You know, what's going on with India trying to insert itself. And there's all kinds of complaints coming from people in Kenya about the fact that the Indians there run everything, in Kenya as well. They have a large percentage of the wealth, cement manufacturing, all kinds of things like that. So similar issues all over Africa. And there are situations as well, though, where they brought the Dalits to work as slave labor. And what happened was India saw, Gandhi saw that the East Indians, who were not Dalits, but just regular East Indians, like Hindus, were being treated like the Black slaves. And that's why he started his whole thing in South Africa. That's why he started to stand up for his people there, because they were being treated like the Black people. So, but yeah, so now the East Indians are starting to say that they're related to these people. And remember, it all started with me showing you this video on Nimrod and you seeing how much he looks like Jesus. He looks like Jesus. Take a look at Jesus again. See him? Yeah, I'll show this to you. Okay, so let's look at him again. All right, so there's the hair, the skin. See, this is now, he's looking all crusty. This is maybe when they first found him. But this is the one I remember I seen in the past. And so, you know, and they say, oh, he's perfectly preserved. Look how brown he is. It's all brown skinned. And this is a combination of, you know, Canaan and KUSH, right? Who is what he was, because Semiramis was his mom. So we basically covered everything. We talked about the fact that the gold standard is what's paying for the Sudan. We see the Indians positioned in the Sudan. They're the ones who originally, the East Indians, who divided the North and the South by supporting the South being separate. The divide and conquer, typical measure of the Canaanite nations, of the great white fallen angel alien people. And we talked about the Pakistanis being the Dalits, Dravidians. Yeah, so I think we pretty well covered it all. We talked about how, you know, the Sudan is not really ruled by the African people. And we showed you little videos from people from that land who can't seem to get unity or any control in that land because it's really run by the West, okay? And a real dichotomy, because China and India are fighting with America / Britain and Europe for control over that region. And we're thinking that the East Indians or the Hindus are inserting themselves in Africa to further position themselves on the continent, but they are at the same time admitting to being the Egyptians. Okay? So, and this is a thing that people struggle with. The Egyptian rulers were Canaanites, okay? They were white, and we heard the Canaanite guy call them white, call even the Khoisan white, okay? Even though they're brown, call them white. It has to do with their bloodline. So, family, that's all I have. I'm going to check your comments, and then I'm on my way out. Thank you so much for watching. May God bless you. Yeah, thank you, Mikal. I hope you were able to see now. My apologies. I'll try and edit this stuff out. But yeah, bless you and keep you, cause his face to shine on you. May he be gracious, lift the light of his countenance, and give you shalom, fam. I have so much stuff to teach, guys. I still haven't taught about Rahab being a Reubenite. Teaching about Paul, the teachings of Paul, Shaul, you know, how people just don't understand the kind of dispensational teaching that he was doing with the elders. And he would kind of run out of order with the direction and instruction of the elders. And he was essentially, the Israelites, the 12 apostles were teaching the Israelites and, you know, the Yehudis and the Gentiles grafted in stages because they had lost the law. So there's a parallel with how the law was dispensed in the Exodus and how it's dispensed by Paul and the apostles and the elders, okay? So the law is not done away with. He's not teaching that. And you need to have that understanding to figure that out. So I'll get into some of these things, but thank you so much for watching, fam. And please like, subscribe, and share. And thank you for those of you who support me. Also, the other thing I can say is those of you who support me, if you do ask me for something, like I said, I am not organized enough to find anything. And it's very challenging for me to go back and find stuff. But if you'll do something for me, I'll go back and find something for you. But I'd rather you don't ask than that you just take a screenshot. Yeah, I think everyone's generally pretty good about it. So anyway, I'm hungry. I got to go. So bless you guys. And yeah, I have to do some advertising here because people are like, you got to do some advertising. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. So yeah, just remember to go to intoalltruth.net to get the calendar and to get Chaya Eat Life and Fast, support my ministry, because that's one of the ways that you can support my ministry is by getting just a membership or getting Chaya Eat Life and Fast. I tried to have books and stuff uploaded. You do get the 2 books for free. If you get a membership, then I will send you the 2 books for free. I'll send you a link to them. But if you get a membership of, I think it's $5, $10, or $15, or 20, 15, or $10. And yeah, you go to intoalltruth.net. I was going to post books and stuff, but I can't seem to, most of the books, the files are too big to upload. So I've been having a problem with that. But if you do a membership, please correspond with me as you're setting it up, because you have to go to the members only page to set it up, okay? And this is where you get the book and the calendar, all right? Downloads right away, get your Pay What You Owe, Let My People Go t-shirts and hoodies. And there's all kinds of thermoses and all kinds of stuff as well over on my Teespring site. So I appreciate the support. I thank you for those of you who do support me. Sorry, I struggle with the admin and sending stuff to you guys, but right now I'm just, that's actually how I kind of got myself burnt out. Too much administration and no support. So please don't ask me. All right. If you love me, you won't ask me. All right. So, unless you've been making a donation, then you've given me something and I'm like, okay, they're paying me to work, so I'll go back and get it. But you better try and find it first and show me you look for it. All right. All right. Love you, fam. And I'm going to go because I'm tired. I got to eat and I got to lay down. All right. Shalom. So I'm going to stop this video. Love you guys, and thank you so much for watching. I'm trying to see you guys, but I've lost the page. I can't find it. I'm trying to say goodbye, y'all. Trying to say bye. Is this you guys? Yes, it is. All right, so shalom, everybody. Have a nice evening. Sleep well. Praying for you. Charlon, Hazel Eugene, everybody, all my regulars, thank you for your support. Please like, subscribe, and share. And Amarachi, of course, and family, please pray for each other, all right? Because we all need support. Sister Light, Student Nations, Lorraine, family, we all need support. So if you see somebody's name in the chat that you see regularly or you chat with regularly, ask them if they need some prayer. Just pray in general, all right? I appreciate you all and love you in Yahusha. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye.